standing on the street protesting and wanted to have an open discussion.
My name is Patrick Christys. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christys tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's almost midday on Tuesday, the 3rd of March.
Missiles in the Middle East, markets on edge, and now Rachel Reeves must deliver her spring statement.
As Iran rattles global energy prices, the Chancellor insists her plan is making Britain stronger and more secure. But is the economy really weathering the storm? I'm Gloria De Piero.
And I'm Christopher Hope, and this is GB News Spring Statement 2026 Live.
Rachel Reeves insists her economic plan is delivering stability, but with markets shaken by Iran and growth forecast downgraded, can the Chancellor convince Britain the recovery is real?
We've come to the Chancellor's own constituency to test the mood on the ground. People concerned about the rising price at the pump.
Not long to go now, but will there be anything for our farmers in this year's spring statement? No mention in last year's, but after a turbulent 12 months, will the Chancellor offer our farmers any kind of stability?
I'm at a pub in Dorset. The landlord here has been campaigning non-stop for more relief for pubs and the wider hospitality sector. But will today's spring statement offer any of that relief? We'll get his reaction later on.
Circus Summer faces sharp criticism from President Donald Trump after the US President branded his stance on Iran not helpful and warned that the UK-US special relationship is under strain.
And overnight, American and Israeli missiles hit key targets in Iran as America warned that a big wave of strikes are coming.
Hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now.
And that comes as GB News understands the government is considering sending HMS Duncan to the eastern Mediterranean to defend RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus after UK base came under attack.
We should reiterate the government is only considering sending HMS Duncan to that region. At the moment, it's still sitting at the Portsmouth Naval Base, and we are instead relying on the French and the Greeks to defend our base on Cyprus.
And Britain's first evacuation flight from the United Arab Emirates touches down at Heathrow Airport overnight, while thousands of Brits are stranded in the Gulf this morning.
The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, will deliver her spring statement very shortly as pressure mounts to keep energy and fuel prices down.
Oil prices are climbing again as conflict in the Middle East rattles markets across the UK and Europe.
And now Rachel Reeves is facing calls to scrap a proposed fuel duty hike set for this September.
We are now joined by the business journalist Ian King, the Labour MP Jeevan Sandhar and the Shadow Exchequer Secretary James Wilde.
OK. It's great to see you here, Ian, and both of you too. Ian, what are you looking for first? It's quite a subdued spring statement, isn't it? Not the usual rabbits out of the hat, the usual moments of big tax increase. It's more of a kind of how it's a sort of almost a temperature check on the economy.
Yes, that's right. We're not going to get, so we're told, any big announcements on taxes or spending. Rachel Reeves has been quite clear on that. Only one fiscal event per year from now on, and that will be the budget in the autumn. But the real highlight, I guess, is going to be the OBR's forecasts. Now, you might say, well, we've only just had a set of forecasts from the OBR in the November budget last year. What's changed since then? Well, we had some interesting actually some fairly positive news on the public finances. Obviously, there was a big surplus notched up by the government in January. Now, you get a big surplus every January because that's when the money rolls in from self-assessments. But it's possibly the first good bit of news that any Chancellor has really had since about November 2023. So we're expecting a growth downgrade, I should say that. The OBR was expecting 1.4% growth this year. That is probably going to be reduced. The Bank of England is certainly lower than that right now. And there have been a few policy changes announced since the budget last year, which the OBR is going to have to take into account when it looks at government spending. First and foremost, there was that U-turn on business rates relief for pubs and live music venues. There was the slight climb down on farmers' inheritance tax. And, of course, one of the showstoppers is special educational needs spending. Now, implied there is something like £4 billion worth of extra spending. So people will be looking to see how that, where's that money going to come from? And, of course, we've had that big spending commitment from Sir Keir Starmer that he wants to see the UK spending 3% of GDP on defence by 2027. Now, that's an implied hike of around £17 billion. Again, where's that money going to come from? And then the other thing that we are very, very confident of expecting, one of the two of the newspapers have predicted this morning, it was a Labour manifesto commitment to bring into line the national minimum wage for younger workers into line with adult workers. The suggestion is that they're going to have to go slowly on that because of the rise that we've seen in youth unemployment. So those are just some of the things that we're looking for. But central to it all, central for the markets, will be what the OBR says about where the deficit is going to come in this year, how much more money the government is going to be spending over subsequent years. Don't forget, Rachel Reeves is committed to bringing current spending into balance by 2029, 2030.
Let's go to our politician now, Jeevan Sundar from Labour. Ian King has just said growth downgraded. This Rachel Reeves is a Chancellor who staked her claim on growing the economy. It was your promise throughout the election campaign, your promise on entering office. The plan's not working.
Well, let's see when the forecasts come out. We're still forecast to be by the IMF. I think the fastest growing economy this year, the second fastest growing last year in the G7. Clearly more turbulent times, but life is clearly difficult and not affordable for people. Now, look, there was strong data in January, not just from the public finances, from retail sales, from business confidence. You've mentioned the pub, for example, the release they're getting. There is good news, but there is a very long way to go. We should be clear, record numbers can't afford a decent life in this country. So for us, making life affordable for every single person, £150 of energy bills. Yes, wage is rising faster than prices. And for every place, the infrastructure outside of London, 15 billion on trains, on rail, on other roads as well. That is good news for every person, for every place, all of us sharing our success, because that's the only way we can all have a stake in our nation.
And James Wild, what are you looking for on the Tory side? I mean, we've got the markets, the FTSE 100 down at 1% by lunchtime, oil and gas prices rising. Isn't the ground shifting under the feet of the Chancellor as she speaks on the forecasting here?
Well, the Chancellor's going to tell us her plan is working, but look at growth. It was downgraded at the budget last year. It's flat. We're not seeing any growth, and that's because she put a £25 billion a year jobs tax in place. Look at the cost of living. Inflation's at 3%, 50% higher than the government inherited, and unemployment is at record levels since the pandemic, particularly for young people as well. So her plan's not working. She needs to change course. She needs to control spending, cut that welfare bill, and get the economy actually moving.
So let's be clear, we're not going to take any lectures whatsoever for the party that left us with the worst wage growth since Napoleon, the worst wage growth in 200 years, and everybody across this country feels it. I want to pick up on inflation in particular, because the point that you raised there, right? When you were in government, inflation at 11%, the highest in the G7.
The war in Ukraine.
Because we were dependent on fossil fuels sold by dictators like Vladimir Putin. And as we've seen overnight in Iran, those fossil fuels go up in price when global conflicts arise. For us, for me, it's homegrown British energy, by the way.
So why not in the North Sea?
It's wind.
Why not in the North Sea?
James, quickly on that.
Well, Ed Miliband's trying to shut down the North Sea. We should be using our homegrown oil and gas reserves and living standards are forecast over this Parliament to grow at a quarter over the decade.
Overshadowing all of this, of course, is the war in Iran. Let's go now to the Home and Security Editor of GB News, Mark White, for an update on what's happening. Mark.
Well, the situation is still unclear with regard to the Type 45 air defence destroyer HMS Duncan. That is the only one of our 6 air defence destroyers which is currently available to deploy. It sat in the Portsmouth Naval Base while the British government, we understand, considers whether to send it to the Eastern Mediterranean as a guard ship effectively for RAF Akrotiri. Remember, it was just overnight yesterday where that base came under drone attack. 2 drones launched, we believe, from southern Lebanon, from the Iranian proxy terror group Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. You're looking at images there of Beirut. That's Israel's response to the fact that Hezbollah has now entered this war and is targeting not just RAF Akrotiri, but of course targeting Israel itself. So Israel bombing Hezbollah-related targets right in the heart of the Lebanese capital, Beirut. There was smoke still emanating from a building after one of those recent strikes. So if this Type 45 British Royal Navy destroyer is sent to the region, it's going to be a few days before it gets there, and a real feeling amongst many I've been speaking to, security sources, that we're really after the fact here. I mean, it's possible, of course, in the days ahead there is still a threat to this RAF base, but what are we doing at the moment? We're relying on the French. The French are sending missile defence and missile and drone defence systems to guard RAF Akrotiri, ships to that region, along with the Hellenic Navy. The Greek Navy are sending 2 frigates and 4 warplanes to help in the defence of RAF Akrotiri. People might wonder where is our Royal Navy in previous times of crises in the Gulf, in the Mediterranean. Our naval vessels have been sent there, but really the Royal Navy is in a woeful state now compared to what it was even just a few years ago, with ageing ships. Our Type 23 frigates are so ageing that just a few of those are still really operational and effective. Some are in maintenance, refit, trying to extend their lifespan until our new frigates come on stream, but the first of those won't be actually fully operational for another 2 years.
Mark White, thank you very much for the update and raising some really pertinent issues there. We will keep viewers and listeners up to date with any developments and, of course, all the questions that Mark raises throughout this programme.
OK, well, it's quite extraordinary, I think, to me, that the US can build up this force in the Mediterranean and out in the region, and we appear not to be ready for it at all. I don't know why that's happening, but we'll wait and see. So, crossing now to GB News Deputy President Tom Harwood. He's in, of course, Rachel Reeves' constituency in Leeds West and Pudsey, taking the temperature there. Tom.
That's right, Chopper. I've come here to the west of Leeds to find out what people are feeling in the Chancellor's own backyard. In fact, I'm here at a petrol station, one that I'm reliably informed is the cheapest in the local area. And looking at these prices, it actually does look really rather cheap. And yet, speaking to people here, what they say is that this is already several pence more expensive than it was several days ago. It's not the level that is so much a concern, it's the rate of change. And wherever you go across the petrol stations of this country, the rates are ticking up. The amount that you'll have to pay is ticking up. And people that we've spoken to here are deeply concerned about it. They're concerned about the economic situation the country faces and the world faces more widely. The war in the Middle East is at the forefront of so many people's minds. And ultimately, how that will affect their pockets, how that will affect their their petrol and how that will affect everything else that ticks along from that starting point. We're expecting inflation might well be negatively harmed by, of course, what is going on with oil and gas. The Strait of Hormuz seems basically blocked to traffic, ships not passing through there. And of course, just yesterday, we heard that Qatar's largest single supplier of LNG, of natural gas, has stopped production, at least for now. Real concerns about the price of energy, the price of petrol too, around the country. Britain particularly vulnerable to moments like this, to spikes in the price of oil and gas. And while some people say that would be a great reason to ramp up production of renewable energy, it is of course renewable energy that relies on a gas backup. So not much comfort to be taken from that particular political line. Ultimately, we're at the whim of a lot of different difficulty in the Middle East as things stand.
Always a comfort to see you, Tom Howard, and we'll be with you throughout the show and throughout the day. We are now joined by the business journalist Ian King, the Labour MP Jeevan Sandhu, and the Shadow Exchequer Secretary James Wilde. Now, Ian King, just a little while ago, the two main parties, if we can still call them that, they set out their stalls, a sort of dividing political arguments that they want to make today as a result of what Rachel Reeves tells us. What do you make of those arguments? Do they both have resonance? Do they both have fair points?
Up to a point. I mean, bear in mind that whoever is Chancellor, whether it's Labour or Conservative, they have very little room for manoeuvre. I mean, Rachel Reeves gave herself more headroom in the jargon during the budget last autumn, going out to around £21 billion by the end of this Parliament. We think, actually, now the OBR aren't going to be marking her homework in the same way. There's been a bit of a change. We think that headroom may increase by around £3 to £4 billion by the end of this Parliament. But whoever's in power, there's really very little room. You've got an ageing population with more demand on the health service. You've got a ballooning benefits bill, and that is perhaps where there's a difference between the government and some of the opposition parties. That is potentially one to look for. I mean, James pointed out the North Sea oil. I mean, it does look pretty rash not to be allowing new drilling and exploration in the North Sea. But at the end of the day, that really only marginally affects the UK's energy supplies right now. Worth pointing out, I mean, we are a net importer of energy. We've seen this spike in natural gas prices, in crude prices over the last 48 hours. A lot of that's down to the fact that Qatar has stopped liquefied natural gas production. Now, the UK probably only gets about 2% of its energy from LNG from Qatar. But, of course, the price is set globally. We get most of our gas from Norway. And you saw natural gas prices spiked by some 54% yesterday. They're up again today. That is a really, really bad situation for any Chancellor, because ultimately that is going to deprive businesses and households of spending money in due course.
When you say headroom, that means spare money over and above current government spending.
Yes, that's right.
So 24 billion could be spent on maybe the armed forces next few months, maybe some kind of adjustment on student loans and all sorts of ways to support the economy. And then that will be the conversation in the summer going to the budget in November.
Yeah, you would do. I mean, in terms of, what economists call the multiplier effect, in other words, where you get the biggest bang for your buck. I mean, probably if I were Chancellor, I'd be looking to deploy it in the roads system. Anyone who's driven up and down the roads right now, they're terribly potholed post the winter weather. I mean, that is a fairly quick way. You get a decent return on transport spending compared with some other areas of government spending. So, I mean, if I was looking to loosen the purse strings by a couple of billion, I'd probably be looking to put it in that direction. Don't forget, most local authorities do have money that is given to them by central government purportedly for improving the roads network. A lot of local authorities don't actually spend it on the roads.
I should do.
Let's go to James Wilde from the Conservatives. So I'm guessing what Rachel Reeves will tell us today is that inflation is down, interest rates are down, the cushion to protect us from shocks like what we're seeing at the moment in Iran, that is up. Wages are up. She has a good story to tell, and it is in contrast to the legacy you left.
Well, inflation's higher than inherited. It's coming down from the level she got it to of nearly 4%. But we're seeing unemployment, business investment and business confidence is low, and that's how we create wealth in the economy. That's why we're seeing jobs aren't being created. Young people are losing their jobs because taxes are being put on them. The productive part of the economy needs to be unleashed. We need to get our foot off the throat of business, allow them to invest and create the jobs. Unfortunately, Rachel Reeves isn't likely to do that, and she's not prepared to live within our means and control spending on welfare. She's increasing the welfare bill. Jeevan and his colleagues just voted for an extra £4 billion a year of spending. That's coming off everyone's taxes and going to welfare street.
Well, hang on a minute. I mean, they would say that part of that money is to lift 500,000 kids out of poverty. So the logic of you opposing that is that vote for a Conservative government next time and you will put 500,000 kids back into poverty.
No, we want to help people out of poverty, and the best way to do that is to be in work and to have higher paid work. What this will do is mean that people who are on benefits don't have to make the same choices that people who aren't on benefits have to make.
Most of those people are in work.
Yeah, but they're still making choices that people who are working who aren't on benefits have to make.
But most people who are impacted by the two-child benefit cap are families in work.
Yes, but they're making choices that people who are working who aren't on benefits are having to make about how many children they have. And previously, the Prime Minister said he didn't believe in this, and then suddenly...
If you have 3 children...
And who's paying for it?
If you have 3 children and you lose your husband or your wife, what James is saying is that actually that person, that family should suffer. But what he's saying is you have 3 children and you lose your job for some reason, you're sick or whatever, you should suffer. More importantly, the children should suffer. Now, we should be clear in this country what happened underneath the Conservatives. In 2017, there was 1 million food bank parcels being handed out. Then, when the 2-child limit came in, 3 million. That's children going hungry. The level of malnutrition doubled in this country. And I want to talk about growth. For me, there is a difference in philosophy here. For me, this country does best when each person, each place, each business can produce more. Now, kids are going hungry today, learn less today, they earn less tomorrow in the future. That's why we're feeding them and we're teaching them. In terms of how businesses are in this country, think about the shocking roads, and I agree, the shocking state of roads in this country. You invest in those roads, you invest to get energy bills down, you invest to get off oil and gas. It's investment to lead to growth, to get to high living standards for every person, for every place in this country. And I would say to James as well, you guys watching at home on this state know what state this country was in when we came in. Okay. I would not trust these guys at all.
Jeevan Senator, thank you, and James Wells, stay with us. And of course, Ian King still here in the studio. Now, President Donald Trump has expressed his disappointment in Sir Keir Starmer after the Prime Minister held off giving military support for offensive strikes against Iran.
The US President suggested that Keir Starmer is pandering to Muslim voters by not backing the war, declaring that Britain is not such a recognisable country anymore.
Speaking in the House of Commons yesterday, the Prime Minister defended his decision not to become involved in an initial wave of offensive strikes on Iran. But in doing so, is he putting the important special UK-US relationship at risk?
Joining us now is the Vice Chair of the International Bar Association War Crimes Committee, Sarah Senieri. Sarah, good to see you. Keir Starmer won plaudits, really, for, although he and Donald Trump coming from different places, that he had managed to establish a good personal rapport with him. Where is that relationship now, in your view?
I think Keir Starmer is in politically a difficult position. Legally, there are serious implications for the UK joining in this war. The United States is clearly the aggressor under international law. They violated international law. The arguments of this preemptive self-defense fall under international law. There is no imminent attack. The Pentagon has said so. Even the statements coming out of the US administration have been inconsistent and contradictory at times. And so for the UK in this position, any argument as to collective self-defense fails until the US ceases their aggressive war. Now, that's not to say that what Iran is doing is legal. They've been striking civilian targets, civilian infrastructure, indiscriminate strikes on a multitude of nations throughout the Gulf and broader region. And so this does place Keir in a difficult position. However, I don't think joining the war and his statement of only defensive strikes, I don't think the US is going to make any distinction between offensive or defensive strikes. And I think Keir is placing the UK at even greater risk, in addition to the tens of thousands of UK citizens that are stranded throughout the region with, little or no plans to evacuate them.
But Sarah Scenari, other countries are more forthcoming about supporting the US, notably France and the like. We're meant to have this special relationship with America. Doesn't that count for anything?
I think, and I notably, both France and China have come out this morning stating that they want to negotiate a ceasefire, that they want to bring a resolution to this. France also indicated that they're going to increase their nuclear arsenal, which is troubling. But notably, when you have a situation like this where countries are being attacked left and right, we cannot expect nations to sit back and not worry about their own future, given the instability. The US, though, has been a very unpredictable partner. They act irrationally, they act impulsively, and I think that places any nation, whether the UK or others, in a very difficult position, especially when our citizens are directly in the line of fire and armed conflict.
And Sarah, the objective of the American and Israeli action is to create a different regime in Iran. What says that's going to work?
It's at this juncture, I don't think it will work. I think the fact that these strikes started with an attack on the school, at the same time that you're claiming that you want to protect Iranian women and children from the regime, and then you kill almost 200 school children. I think any type of regime change is not going to be won by force. They would have to commit to boots on the ground, which I think would raise, we've already lost US service members. And so the question is the United States government seriously considering putting boots on the ground? Would the UK government then be pressured to put US soldiers on the ground and their lives at risk? And to what end? I think if you look at the history of wars in the region, they've not been successful. They've not led to stability.
It's concerning. I suppose if we had a clearer war aims from America, there appear to be disputed war aims from both Israel and America, that may be easier for the legal-minded Keir Starmer to get involved. I mean, he appears to be led by the law rather than other factors at the moment.
I don't think Keir is being led by the law, actually. And I think the history since Keir has been in office is that he has regularly disregarded international law. And at this juncture, I think Keir is concerned about trade relations with the US, defense relations with the US, Trump's ongoing tariff impositions on countries around the globe. And I don't think Keir is acting rationally in this. I don't think he's acting as the leader. And I think that he's been quite impulsive even in his responses to the United States on this. If he did have even advanced knowledge that the US was going, we had warnings publicly for weeks that the US was threatening to strike Iran again, that there should have been discussions in place, there should have been plans in place by the UK government, and at a minimum, Keir should have pursued what he was going to do in relation to the UK citizens stranded throughout the Gulf region.
Sarah Scenari from the International Bar Association War Crimes Committee, thank you for your expertise there.
OK, we're joined now by the business journalist Ian King, Labour MP Jeevan Sandha, and of course the Shadow Exchequer for the Tory party, James Wilde. To you quickly, Ian King, I've got to reflect on the last budget we were in the same studio for when we saw the OBR documents being leaked about now on the eve as we waited for the Chancellor to stand up. That won't happen this time, we're told. Why is that?
No, I've just been going through my phone to see whether anything's popped up yet, but it hasn't. Obviously a terrible time for the OBR, and they lost their chair, Richard Hughes, subsequently. So, as things stand, the OBR is presenting this set of forecasts without a permanent chair. Applications close on the 26th.
Yes, have you applied yet?
Oh, you must be joking. So the presentation, as we understand it, will be from Tom Josephs, who's the head of the budget response.
And the government's doing it itself rather than the outside body.
Yes, that's right. But as I was saying, the way in which the OBR marks the government's homework is slightly changing. There's not going to be this sort of commentary on whether she's going to achieve the headroom that she's seeking, for one thing. There will be slight differences.
Jeevan Sandha from Labour. So the Chancellor has briefed up, this is a non-event. It's we're not going to see new policies. We're not going to get any surprises in this statement. It's something she has to do by law when the Office for Budget Responsibility was set up, that we had to look at the forecasts twice a year. But let me put to you, I mean, people want to hear something. I mean, and particularly after that by-election defeat last week, surely you lot want to hear something for all your constituents. This is a moment. She has a moment. She's standing up in Parliament. The whole media is watching. It will be reported what she says to all of your constituents. Wouldn't you like a bit of good news?
Well, let's take that a bit head on, right? Like, we did lose badly in Gorton and Denton, and the message is clear that people are finding life unaffordable, and particularly in Gorton and Denton, a lot of graduates, a lot of renters who are not finding life affordable. That is why we're making housing more affordable. There may be news on student loan repayments in the weeks to come. But on the specifics of like why you wouldn't have the spring statement, the problem is that when you have yearly statements, you're constantly shifting around tax policy, spending policies in ways that's unhelpful for business and individuals. So once a year, it was a recommendation by the IMF. And look, if I was a business or an individual, I don't want that changing twice a year. I want it changing once a year. Not to be saying, of course, there will be further decisions coming down the line in the budget.
But the rising unemployment costs for young graduates, student loans crisis. I mean, James Wilde, according to Jeevan Sanders, there'll be nothing for them at all.
Well, Jeevan just said that life's unaffordable for many people, and then said the Chancellor's going to do absolutely nothing about it. She should be acting. She needs to change course and get the economy moving. Her decisions, her tax rises, mean economy is flatlining, and that needs to change for all the people watching this programme struggling at home.
Youth unemployment is a problem, Jeevan Sundar, isn't it? And I mean, it's sort of higher than the average across Europe. I think it's the highest that we've had for quite a long time. Oh, we can just see live scenes there from the House of Commons. Rachel Reeves not on her feet yet. That is Chion Wara, who is the chair of the Science and Technology Committee. For those of you who are interested in our weird knowledge, Jeevan Sundar, youth unemployment, it's a real problem, and that has gone up under your watch. You have to own that.
About 1 million people now not in education, employment or training. That was about the number we inherited from the last government. I do accept that some people more are seeking work at this point in time, but there's more for us to do. There's two sides of that. There is more training, yes. There is more work in terms of investment, as I've spoken to, but also, of course, the youth guarantee that will ensure there are jobs in place, paid jobs in place, those who are long-term unemployed.
So
there is plans to come from fully subsidised for the private sector in order to create those jobs, but give it to them. But let's be clear, it's not just creating jobs, but in the places that are most needed for those people.
James Wilde, Jeevan's there saying it's not the government's fault about this increased numbers of unemployed in our young people.
Well, that's not what the Bank of England had said. They'd said that the higher taxes the government put in place are directly responsible for the higher youth unemployment. Hospitality, a massive sector in this country, has shed jobs. Young people not getting the first opportunity precisely because of the jobs tax that the Chancellor put in place. And she's been warned repeatedly. She's still doubling the business rates for all of the sector apart from pubs. That's going to lead to more businesses going under.
Well, I said pub relief is there to help pubs, and you know it's an incredibly important sector for us on the other side. But going forward as well, in terms of things you have to pay for, and you see what this country is like, how hard it is to get a GP appointment, how hard it is to drive down the road, how hard it is to get cheaper energy because we're still dependent on oil and gas. And by the way, getting out of the North Sea does not help us because those prices are set internationally. How do you invest to get those prices down? How do you invest to get growth going? So it's good news the fact we've got the fastest growing economy in the G7. It is more difficult at the moment. I accept that. There is further to go. But this is the way we get this economy growing, and we're not taking lecture from this lot either.
The Tony Blair Institute, not just the Bank of England, but, you know, you're the most successful Labour Prime Minister. He has a think tank now. And that think tank has said youth unemployment is a problem. And that is because you have increased the youth minimum wage rate too quickly. Now, it is reported that the government may ask the Low Pay Commission to slow down a bit on that. Would you welcome that?
I can't comment on that particular decision only because that decision that may be coming out.
What do you want though, Jeevan Sundar? Shouldn't they hold back on further increases to try and make them more employable, young people?
I think you have to create jobs for young people to go into, and I take the point back, for example, you're getting jobs in bars and restaurants, saying it's great for young people. One thing I would say for James, I started working in a shop, it's a great first step. But my question going beyond that is how do you create good jobs for them going forward? How do you ensure they can be in this labour market? And that is about the government helping to create jobs, stepping in, and on the other side, of course, making costs lower for businesses as well.
Yeah, James Wilde, are you happy with this, the ever-increasing minimum wage? It's concerning for employees.
Well, we don't need the government to step in and create jobs. That's what the private sector does if you don't tax them so much that they can't afford to hire people. And the costs that the government is imposing, whether that's the minimum wage or others, that's making it less competitive, harder to employ people. Is it better for someone to be in work on a lower wage than not have a job? Yes.
Would the Tories like a lower minimum wage? for young people, because that is the logic of your argument.
Well, we don't want to see people priced out of employment, and that's
So you want
what's
to see a
happening
lower
at
minimum.
the moment.
So the only conclusion to come from that statement is that under the Tories, there would be a lower minimum wage rate for young people. I know there already is.
Well, when we were in government, we had a differential between people below 21. The government wants to equalise that. People are now warning about the damage that that's going to do to the economy, and Jeevan does support that or doesn't, I'm not sure.
Well, absolutely, of course I support the government's policies, by the way, without staying it. But I want to be clear as well, you talk about creating jobs. The problem we have in this country, there are not enough jobs, but also not enough jobs, particularly across this nation. In Midlands, our employment levels are only 65%. In post-industrial areas in particular, like where I'm in the East Midlands, there are not enough good jobs. So yes, it's about supporting them to produce more, but also the government stepping up, help to create those jobs where we need them.
Jeevan James, thank you. Ian King, we're still with you in the studio, watching scenes here from Foreign Office questions, I think, in the House of Commons, waiting for the Chancellor. She's there in a blue suit next door to the Prime Minister. Is this a big, important statement? Where does it rate? I mean, it's been definitely downplayed by the government.
It has been downplayed by the government, but I mean, it's very, very important for the gilt markets, UK government bonds, because this is the OBR's forecasts are really going to set out for them how many more gilts the government's going to be selling.
And that's the borrowing cost.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a very, very key point. Should point out, by the way, ever since the events in the Middle East have unfolded over the last couple of days, you've seen a spike in UK gilt yields. If you look at the 10-year, which is, to most people's thinking, the benchmark, I mean, the yield there is up to 4.53%.
So why is that bad for the economy, to explain that?
Well, because it pushes up the government's borrowing costs. It means that the government has to pay more interest whenever it borrows money on the national debt. Yeah, so it's not terribly good.
Is there a better word for a gilt? Is it like the mortgage that we have, or the sort of loan that we've got?
Well, it's implied government borrowing. The gilt yields are implied government borrowing costs. The term gilt, by the way, comes from the term gilt-edged securities, because the notion is that if you lend money to the UK government, it's as safe an investment as there is. I should say, actually, I've done some myself in the last couple of days. I bought some 3-month Treasury bills, which yield 3.55%. Money's only tied up till June, but it's nonetheless not about. It's better than you get in most bank accounts.
Oh, right, Ian. Well, we need to have a chat with Ian
things you can use.
after this.
I think we're wrapping up now in the House of Commons. So Ian King, let's be on his feet there, and of course Jeevan Sand, and of course James Well. Thank you for joining us. We're across now live to the House of Commons, where Chancellor Rachel Reeves will deliver her spring statement. Here she comes.
Mr. Speaker, this government has the right economic plan for our country. A plan that is...
Order. Sorry. Look, both sides, if you're not interested, please, you don't have to stay in the chamber. I'm interested, my constituents are interested, and your constituents as well, Chancellor.
A plan that is even more important in a world that in the last few days has become yet more uncertain. With unfolding conflict in Iran and the Middle East, it is incumbent on me and on this government to chart a course through that uncertainty, to secure our economy against shocks and protect families from the turbulence that we see beyond our borders. I want to express my gratitude to members of our armed forces as they serve across the globe to protect our country. And I want to reassure this House that I am in regular contact with the Governor of the Bank of England, with my international counterparts and with key affected industries, including our maritime sector. And tomorrow I will meet with our North Sea industry leaders to discuss the implications that they face and work with them to manage this uncertain period. Mr. Speaker, in an increasingly dangerous world, I am proud to be the Chancellor that is delivering the biggest uplift in defence spending since the Cold War. With £650 million committed in January to upgrade our Typhoon fighter jets, a new Royal Navy frigate launched from Rosyth last week, and just yesterday, our £1 billion helicopter deal with Leonardo. I am in no doubt about Britain's ability to navigate the challenges we face. The plan that I have been driving forward since the election is the right one. Stability in our public finances, investment in our infrastructure, including our armed forces, and reform to Britain's economy. It is a plan to reshape our economy and break with the failed ideas of the past. Building growth on not just the contribution of a few people in a few places, but in every part of Britain, with a state that doesn't stand back, but that steps up, strengthening our trading relationships and our alliances, creating capacity in our economy through affordable housing, better transport and free childcare. An active and a strategic state, building growth and economic security in an uncertain world. Stability is the single most important precondition for economic growth. That is why we have committed to a single major fiscal event a year, limiting major policy changes to the budget and giving businesses and households the certainty that they need. Today, the new forecasts from the Office of Budget Responsibility show that our plan is the right one. Inflation is down, borrowing is down, living standards are up, and the economy is growing. Mr. Speaker, this government has restored economic stability. The previous government allowed inflation to skyrocket to over 11%. They stoked interest rates to 15-year highs and delivered the first parliament on record where people were poorer at the end than they were at the start of the parliament. That is their record.
Well before the pandemic.
I recognise the impact that what the Conservatives did had on families. We promised change at the election, and I understand the responsibility on me to deliver that change. I know that the question that people will ask themselves at the next election is this: are me and my family better off? I am determined that the answer will be yes. The promise that we changed the change that we promised has already started. There have been 6 cuts in interest rates since the general election, the fastest pace in reduction in 17 years. And inflation has fallen. For businesses, that means lower capital costs and greater uncertainty. And for families, it means more money in their pockets to spend in local shops and on the high streets. Those interest rate cuts will save households over £1,300 per year on a typical new fixed-rate mortgage. And real wages have risen by more in the first 18 months of this Labour government than they did in the first 10 years of the Tory government. At the budget, I went further to deliver the change that people rightly demand. I extended a 5p cut in fuel duty for a further 5 months. I froze prescription charges for the second year in a row. I froze rail fares for the first time in 30 years. And I am taking £150 off of energy bills from next month. In February, the Bank of England confirmed that inflation will fall faster because of the action that I took in the budget. And today, the Office for Budget Responsibility expects inflation to come down even faster than it forecast in the autumn. Mr. Speaker, in the current global context, with the risk that rising energy prices will put upward pressure on inflation, the action that I have taken is even more crucial. Keeping inflation low and stable is the best way to support family incomes and reduce pressures on the cost of living. But that's not all we've done. This Labour government has funded 30 hours of free childcare for working families. We are rolling out free breakfast clubs at primary schools. And we are set to achieve the biggest reduction in child poverty over a parliament since records began by reversing the shameful 2-child limit imposed by the party opposite. That is the moral choice for the children who will no longer go to school hungry, and for the women who will no longer have to suffer the grotesque indignity of the rape clause. And scrapping the two-child limit is an enduring investment in our children and in our future to realise the potential of young people whose otherwise potential would be wasted. The Tories have said that they would reinstate that destructive policy. And now Reform are saying exactly the same thing. Two parties united in their intention to plunge nearly 500,000 children back into poverty at a single stroke. Mr. Speaker, if you import failed Tory politicians, you get failed Tory policies too. Labour and only Labour have the right economic plan for our country.
Where's Nigel?
Last year, we demonstrated the resilience of Britain's economy in the face of global headwinds, with the fastest growth of any G7 country in Europe. Today, the Office for Budget Responsibility has updated its growth forecasts, including reflecting lower net migration. Average growth across the forecast period is largely unchanged, while the OBR has adjusted the profile of GDP so that it grows slightly slower in 2026 and then faster in both 2027 and 2028. So GDP is forecast to grow by 1.1% in 2026, 1.6% in both 2027 and 2028, and 1.5% in both 2029 and 2030. I've always said that growth is for a purpose, to make working people better off. And I can confirm that GDP per person is set to grow more than was expected in the autumn, with growth of 5.6% over the course of this Parliament. That compares to a fall in GDP per capita in the last Parliament. And by the next election, after accounting for inflation, people are forecast to be £1,000 better off per year. Oh, I didn't hear them that time. We promised change, Mr. Speaker, and we are delivering that change. The economy is growing, living standards are rising, and inflation has fallen. But I'm not satisfied yet with these forecasts. I know that the economy is not yet working for everyone, and that the deep economic scars left by the party opposite and their mates in Reform are still blighting the lives of too many people. In today's forecasts, unemployment is set to peak later this year and then fall in every year of the forecast period, ending the forecast period at 4.1%, lower than it was at the start of the Parliament. But young people in particular are still suffering from the aftermath of years of Tory mismanagement. In the last 5 years of the previous government, the number of young people not in education, employment or training increased by 113,000. The number of inactive people reached record highs under their government. And over the last decade, apprenticeship starts by young people fell by 40%. This government will not leave an entire generation of young people behind. We are already taking action with additional investment to reform apprenticeships to prioritise young people. And through the £820 million Youth Guarantee, providing young people with employment support and a guaranteed job. And in the coming weeks, I will set out more reforms to undo the Tory legacy of neglect and give young people the support and the opportunity that they deserve. Mr. Speaker, in the face of global uncertainty, we beat the forecast last year. In the year ahead, the choices that we are making gives me confidence that we will beat them again. And in the year ahead, more of the choices that we have already made will come into effect. Discounts on business energy costs, trade deals with India, the US and the EU, reforms to back our entrepreneurs, investment in our infrastructure, skills funding for further education and more planning reforms. Progress, opposed by the Conservatives, opposed by Reform, opposed by the Liberal Democrats and opposed by the Green Party too. Because it is Labour and only Labour that has the right plan for our country. Our plan for growth is grounded in a profound rejection of the failed economic dogmas of the past. The trickle-down, trickle-out thinking that produced ever-diminishing returns for working people. I know that an economy cannot be working if it is delivering for only a few people in a few places. I know that it matters where things are made and who makes them. And I believe that the working people who keep our country moving deserve a fair day's pay for an honest day's work. Since the election, I've been making the big choices that will bring about the deep structural changes that our economy needs so that it works again for working people. The choices to take on vested interests and back the builders, not the blockers. The choice to increase public investment and protect our public finances with new fiscal rules. And the choice to give people in all parts of our country the opportunities that they deserve. By reforming the Treasury spending rules in the Green Book to unlock investment in all of our urban, rural and coastal communities. Mr. Speaker, those are the right choices for our country, for security, for stability and growth. Today's forecasts from the Office of Budget Responsibility show that they are starting to pay off. And I am clear-eyed about where the opportunities for the British economy lie in this Parliament and beyond. In my second May's lecture in 2 weeks' time, I will set out 3 major choices that will determine the course of our economy into the future. To go further in strengthening our global relationships, breaking down trade barriers and deepening alliances with our European partners for a more secured and connected economy. To go further in backing innovation and harnessing the power of AI, so that entrepreneurs and innovators thrive here in Britain, and so that working people reap the rewards. And to go further in transforming our economic geography, so that we can build growth on a broad and stable basis, spreading opportunity and unlocking opportunity in every part of Britain. Mr. Speaker, I came into politics because I believed in a government that stands up for working people. That everyone, no matter where they grow up, deserves security and a fair chance to achieve their potential. And that being able to manage the bills, afford a home and pay for a holiday is never too much to ask. When governments lose control of the economy, as the Tories did, it is working people who pay the price. In their pay packets, in their bills, and in their mortgages. That's what the party opposite inflicted on working people over 14 years. Austerity that cut off investment. Brexit, which cut us off from our closest trading partners. And Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget. Cheered on by the Leader of the Opposition and by the Honourable Member for Clacton. Oh, he's not here today. Mr. Speaker, 5 Prime Ministers, 7 Chancellors, 11 plans for growth, and at the end of it all, the only Parliament on record where living standards were worse at the end than they were at the start. And a £22 billion black hole in the public finances. That is their legacy. And make no mistake, the Tory Tribute Act up there, they would do exactly the same thing. They may have changed the colour of their rosettes, but the British people won't forget that they are the exact same people who wrecked our public services and wrecked our public finances in the Tory government. The same people, the same policies, and the same disastrous outcomes for working people. The Tories left our country, our people, and our allies exposed. They had no plan and no intention to fund their pledge to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence. And reform would go one step further by ditching our allies and siding with Russia. While the Green Party want to take us out of NATO and jeopardise our alliances. Well, she shakes her head. I don't know if they've changed their policy, but their policy is to take us out of NATO. So let me be clear. It is Labour and only Labour that can provide social justice, national security and fiscal responsibility. In their forecasts today, the Office for Budget Responsibility show that we are set to reduce borrowing by nearly £18 billion compared to the autumn. This year, we are set to borrow less than the G7 average, something that the Tories never achieved in any year in 14 years. The forecast today shows that public sector net borrowing is set to fall from 4.3% this year to 3.6% next year, then to 2.9%, 2.5% and to 1.8% in 2029-30. And even after funding other measures announced since the budget, including the new special educational needs system set out by my right honourable friend, the Education Secretary, last week, headroom against the stability rule in 2029-30 has increased from £21.7 billion to £23.6 billion, with headroom against the investment rule also higher at £27.1 billion. And debt is now set to be lower in every year of the forecast compared with the autumn. Mr. Speaker, it is because of the choices I have made to keep our public finances stable and restore our credibility that we can invest in the priorities of working people. Investment in our communities with pride in place. Investment in our schools to fix crumbling classrooms and give every child the education that they deserve. And investment in our NHS to bring waiting lists down and with a record cash settlement. I have never accepted that we have to choose between social justice and fiscal responsibility. Because there is nothing progressive, nothing Labour, about spending £100 billion a year. That's £1 in £10 of what government spends, just paying on the interest of the debt racked up by the party opposite. After their disastrous mini-budget, our debt interest rate soared towards the highest in the G7. And from my budget to this forecast, while average yields rose for the rest of the G7, yields on UK government debt fell. The Tories squandered Britain's credibility. My plan is rebuilding it. Already, because of the action that I have taken, we are expected to spend nearly £4 billion less on debt interest next year than was forecast in the autumn. And if we stay the course and stick to our plan, and our debt interests return to the G7 average, where they were before they wrecked things with Liz Truss's mini-budget, we will have £15 billion a year more for the priorities of working people and to make working people better off. That is the prize on offer. That is the prize within our grasp. This is the right plan. A plan that is more necessary than ever before in the world of uncertainty. A stronger and more secure economy. Inflation and interest rates falling. Resilient public finances. And in every part of Britain, working people better off. Mr. Speaker, every additional patient treated in an NHS hospital, every child lifted out of poverty, every breakfast club in every school is because of the choices that we have taken. And because I have the right plan for our country. But let this House be in no doubt. Every pound that we have invested, every pound in the pockets of working people, every pound that we have secured in this forecast today can be wiped out by a change of course. So we must reject a return to austerity, to protect our public services and invest in Britain's future. We must reject the temptation of easy answers and reckless borrowing, to protect family finances and get the cost of living down. And we must reject the political instability which would put at risk all the progress that we have made. My plan is the right one. I am in no doubt about how great the rewards we can be if we stay the course. The forecasts today confirm that the choices this government have made are the right ones. Stability in our public finances, interest rates and inflation falling, living standards rising, more children lifted out of poverty, more appointments in our NHS, more investment in our infrastructure, a growing economy and more money in the pockets of working people. These are the right choices. This is the right plan, and I commend this statement to the House.
Chancellor Belstride.
Mr. Speaker, is that it? What utter complacency. A Chancellor in denial. She speaks of stability. What planet is the Right Honourable Lady on? She has lurched from putting up taxes to destroying growth, to destroying headroom, to coming back to putting up more taxes, more growth destroyed. Round and round we go, like a fiscal twister ripping up everything in its path. And Mr. Speaker,
Sorry. I will hear the Shadow Chancellor, because people need to recognise there's two sides. Let's hear the other side now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. They just don't like the truth, Mr. Speaker. That's the truth of it. As our economy bleeds out, what does the Right Honourable Lady do? She comes to this House with nothing to say and with no plan. Unless, of course, doing nothing is a cunning plan to avoid those U-turns further down the line. She is weak, Mr. Speaker. She has even stripped the OBR of its ability to assess whether she is meeting her fiscal targets. So, Mr. Speaker, let it be remembered that at this time in this chamber, this weak and chaotic government gave up on the British people. She has nothing to say to us today. This is not a spring statement. This is not a spring statement, Mr. Speaker. It is...
Order. Mr. Gardner, I expect better. We have to listen to you on a Thursday night. I don't need to hear you now. Belstride.
No, they don't like it, Mr. Speaker. They don't like the truth. This is not a spring statement, Mr. Speaker. It is a surrender statement. Yes. The Chancellor has the temerity to suggest that she is creating the conditions for renewed growth. She is rather like the dodgy estate agent standing in the crumbling building with the roof gone, the windows gone, with the floor gone, and saying, just think of the potential. But that potential, Mr. Speaker, has been undermined by the terrible state of our public finances. When it comes to the deficit, she knows, the Right Honourable Lady knows, when it comes to borrowing, that borrowing this year is almost double that which was forecast at the time of the general election. She knows that the forecasts are predicated on the numbers she has given to the OBR that they have to accept, including squeezing spending at the end of the Parliament, raising taxes, raising energy bills at the same time. We know, Mr. Speaker, we know that that is unrealistic. And the reason that we know it, Mr. Speaker, is that she and the Prime Minister have no backbone when it comes to taking difficult decisions. Before the budget, Mr. Speaker, winter fuel payment, U-turn. Welfare reform, U-turn. Two-child benefit cap, U-turn. And in the short period of time after the budget, Mr. Speaker, farm tax, U-turn. Family business tax, U-turn. Public houses, U-turn. And on the deficit, when she rises again, could she tell the House how she's going to fill that black hole of £6 billion around this end budget? And she mentions, quite rightly, the Iran war and the greater threats that our country faces. Could she explain in a moment how she is going to fund what we have been urging her to do, to go to 3% of GDP on defence by the end of this Parliament? How will she fund that?
Order. Seriously, we need to hear this. If you don't... I can help you if you don't want to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. She mentions the cost of borrowing and says it is coming down. Does she not know that the cost of borrowing in this country has been the highest in the G7, higher even?
Somebody needs to switch the phone off. It is not acceptable.
Even higher than Greece. Indeed, Mr. Speaker. If debt were a government department, it would be the third largest spending department in Whitehall. Not money going on the people's priorities, but simply being flushed down the drain. She makes great store of the latest forecasts on debt, saying that it is coming down compared to the forecast back in the autumn. But if you strip away her dodgy definition of debt, it will be going up in just about every year of that forecast. Yet, Mr. Speaker, she has the audacity to praise her own performance. She points to growth, but does she not know that the Bank of England only last month downgraded growth for both this year and next year? She specifically, a moment ago, said that this government had beaten the forecast for growth from last year. The forecast at the beginning of last year was for 2% growth. The growth outcome at the end of last year was 1.3%, Mr. Speaker. By my mathematics, that is not an improvement. It should be a considerable concern to the entire House that the Right Honourable Lady clearly thinks that it is. She points to interest rates coming down, but does she not know that her ruinously inflationary policies have seen interest rates higher for longer, meaning more expensive mortgages for hundreds of thousands of people across our country? And unemployment, well, Mr. Speaker, she was slightly coy about unemployment because, of course, what we know is it now stands at a 5-year high. And under every single Labour government in history, unemployment has risen. And this government is no exception. On tax, the Right Honourable Lady is fond of saying that she is simply asking people to pay a little more tax. Well, I don't remember, Mr. Speaker, the taxman phoning me up and asking me if I'd awfully mind paying a little more tax. And what does it mean? What does it mean? It means workers struggling. It means employers laying off staff. It means tens of thousands of the most talented people in our country going to other places where they believe the opportunities are greater. That's what a little more tax means, Mr. Speaker. And what has that tax done? It has destroyed, damaged deeply entire sectors of our economy. Hospitality, almost 100,000 job losses since this government came to office, particularly impacting our youngest people. Youth unemployment, the highest in Europe, the first time for a quarter of a century. Young people, their dreams, their aspirations, their hopes, all those bright young faces smashed on the altar of her incompetence. What is her message to young people today? Nothing. Her message today has been that her so-called plan is working. But what is the reality? Inflation up, borrowing up, spending up, tax up, welfare up, unemployment up. All of this, Mr. Speaker, speaks to the weakness and chaos of this government. Is it any wonder that her so-called plan is not working? We have amongst the highest energy costs in the world, and yet she doubles down on net zero. And given where we are, the first thing that the Right Honourable Lady should do is get rid of those taxes on North Sea oil and allow us to start exploiting those opportunities. We have a welfare bill that's spiralling ever upwards. But what does she do? She removes the two-child benefit cap. And we have taxes. And we have taxes heading to the highest level in our history because of her choices, destroying the futures of men, women and children right up and down our country. No contrition, no apology, no plan to do anything about it. But it does not have to be this way, Mr. Speaker. At our conference, we set out how we can control public spending. £47 billion worth of savings, especially on the welfare bill. Some £23 billion in savings, because we are a party that believes in work rather than benefits. We are a party that will do something about it. We are the party of work. They are the party of Benefit Street. We will bring taxes down to kickstart the economy, abolish stamp duty, scrap business rates for businesses on our high streets, a £5,000 tax cut for our young people, a cheap power plan. We will fix student loans. We will invest in apprenticeship. And through our golden rule, Mr. Speaker, we will get on top of the deficit. And by doing that, we will grow the economy. That's our plan. What is her plan? The truth, Mr. Speaker, is that she has no plan, or as her Health Secretary said, there is no growth strategy at all. And even if she did have a plan, she would be too weak to deliver it. The psychodramas swirling around Number 10, the almost daily scandals visiting the door of the Prime Minister, the sight of our once a person at the highest level within the diplomatic service being carted away in a car by the police, and backbenchers calling the shots. The Chancellor's credibility has gone. The Prime Minister's Chief of Staff has gone. His Cabinet Secretary has gone. But somehow the Chancellor hangs on. But through the chaotic fog, Mr. Speaker, the drums are drawing ever closer. The British people deserve so much better. So for the hard-working people in our country crushed by taxes, by those denied employment, by the farmers and the family business owners who have suffered in fear for too long, for every hollowed-out high street, for every young person robbed of their future, for every elderly person struggling to survive, for the generations yet to come, we say go.
Just the next checker.
Well, I know that the OBR didn't publish the forecast until I sat down, but I still think he could have done a little bit better than that. To be honest, I was hoping that the leader of the opposition was going to respond today, and after that performance, I expect she does too. Now, Mr. Speaker, don't worry, I've got more. Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Gentleman said that they set out their economic policy at their conference a few weeks ago. Well, they had 14 years to set out their economic policy, and it's because of their economic policy that they're now sitting on those benches. Now, Mr. Speaker, today's performance is yet another reminder of how irrelevant the Conservative Party now is. And I hate to break it to the Shadow Chancellor, but people stopped listening to them a long while ago. And you can see why. Because whether it is in office or in opposition, the Right Honourable Gentleman's Party and his leader have been wrong about the economy time and time again. opposed economic responsibility and backed Liz Truss. Wrong. They opposed closer ties to Europe and backed Brexit. Wrong. They opposed cuts in child poverty and want to repeat austerity. Wrong values, wrong economics. They are just plain wrong. After last year's budget, his leader predicted with characteristic foresight that borrowing would increase every year. She was wrong. Borrowing is now coming down faster. Faster than under the Tories. Well, that's not difficult because it went up. Faster than forecast in the autumn and faster than in any other G7 economy. Last year, the Leader of the Opposition told us that energy bills would rise. She was wrong. They're coming down by £117 next month. And she told us that there would be no more Tory defections to reform. How's that one going? Now, let me return to the substance of his remarks, although I've had to reduce this section somewhat. The Shadow Chancellor mentioned student loans, but he neglected to mention that he was in the party that tripled university tuition fees, froze thresholds and oversaw higher interest rates, which led to the problems we are in today. Now, on special educational needs, they left a system in utter crisis, as every parent, every child and every school will tell you. So we'll take no lessons from them. But in terms of where the money's coming from, it's sat out today in the documents. But of course, the Shadow Chancellor doesn't know that because he didn't even bother listening to my statement. Now, the Shadow Chancellor mentioned defence, but he neglected to mention that it was his government that left office without any plan to fund their pledge to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence. And it is this government, and with me as Chancellor, that we are delivering the biggest increase in defence spending since the Cold War. Now, the Shadow Chancellor mentioned the welfare bill, and on this one, I've got to say it is a little bit rich, because he neglected to mention that the welfare bill rose twice as fast in the last Parliament, and that he was Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. Mr. Speaker, they broke the welfare system, and it is this government that is fixing it. Now, the Shadow Chancellor mentioned youth unemployment. And as I said, there is more that needs to be done. After they increased the number of young people not in education, employment or trading by 113,000 and slashed the number of young people starting apprenticeships by 40%. So, Mr. Speaker, we'll take no lessons from the party opposites. They're the arsonists, not the fire brigade. And if they can't be honest about the mess they've made, no wonder they can't recognise that we are fixing it. Today's forecast shows that debt is down, borrowing is down, inflation is down, and interest rates are down from 5.25% where they left them to 3.75% today. And investment, living standards and growth, they are all up. Let me break it to him and to his leader. There's no blank page for the Tory party, no year zero. They gave us chaos and instability. Labour is fixing it. They gave us austerity. Labour is investing in Britain. They gave us 14 years of barely managed decline, and we are reversing it. Now, we know that if they ever get the chance, they'll do all of the same again. More chaos, more kids in poverty, more and deeper cuts. It would be terrifying if there was any prospect at all that they would ever win an election again. Now, the Leader of the Opposition can keep turning up every week, but it's a total waste of time. Their party is the past and not the future. And I don't know what is more pathetic. The culprits who jumped ship and joined Reform and its Russian mates, or the culprits who stayed in the Conservative Party and pretended that the last 14 years never happened. Either way, the choice is clear. Investment with Labour or austerity with the Conservatives. Stability with Labour or more chaos with the Conservatives. Wrong leader, wrong choices, wrong plan. Only Labour has the right plan for our economy and for our country.
Chair of the Select Committee.
Full debate now. going on in the House of Commons. We're going to come back to the studio to make sense of it all, and we're joined to do so by the business journalist Ian King, who we're lucky to have with us. So Rachel Reeves said, inflation down, borrowing down, living standards up, the economy is growing. Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, said, what planet is she living on? Who is right?
Well, they both are, in a sense, because you've had this big downgrade in growth for the current year from 1.4%, which is what the OBR were expecting in November last year, down to 1.1%. You then get a couple of marginal tweaks. We're up from 1.5 to 1.6. Next year, 1.7% to 1.8% in 2028, the last full year, of course, before we get a general election. And then the numbers for 29 and 30 are relatively unchanged. So the outlook's slightly better further out, but not so good for this year. It was interesting that Rachel Reeves said in the speech that the outlook for inflation is going to come down slightly more rapidly than the OBR was expecting in November. But bear in mind, of course, these forecasts were produced before Trump attacks Iran. And if you look at what's been going on with oil and gas prices, I mean, that has real potential. If this conflict turns out to be protracted, then that really does potentially bake in high rates of inflation down the line, and all of the other things that brings with it. Weaker consumer spending for a start off, weaker business investment, all the things that you don't want to happen. So there's a good deal of uncertainty there.
And see where it plays out. Now, we heard the issue of headroom raised there. That's the extra spending money over and above government spending plans. Where are you with that? Because that, of course, will define what you can do in the budget in November.
Yes, that's right. So by the end of the Parliament, Rachel Reeves is now expecting headroom of £23.6 billion, up from £21.7 billion at the time of the November budget. I have to say, that's actually slightly lower than some of the economists in the market had. They thought that headroom might increase by as much as £4 or £5 billion more. So that's slightly disappointing. But look, it means that the public finances on that very specific measure are going in the right direction for the Chancellor.
Looking at unemployment too, their forecast had to fall after peaking this year. That's great news. I think she talked then about a speech she's giving this month on unemployment and the crisis amongst youth unemployed. That's to be welcomed.
Yes, she's giving. She mentioned that in the speech. She's giving the Mays Lecture in 2 weeks' time. Now, the Mays Lecture is one of the big events in the city calendar. It's where the Chancellor, the Bank of England governor, or some worthy economist gives a big speech setting out thoughts on the economy. Interestingly, Rachel Reeves is only the first Chancellor going back a long, long way to deliver more than one of these. She gave it back in 2024. It's not a given that the Chancellor gets invited to give that speech, but all of the greats have done it over the years, the likes of Nigel Lawson, Alistair Darling, Gordon Brown, George Osborne. They've all given them. So quite interesting that she gets the chance to do it twice.
And in there, she said that she was going to talk about three things in that lecture, which is the next big event. One of them was the impact on the economy of Brexit and how we as a country need to have closer ties. No one's suggesting rejoining the European Union, thank goodness, after all that kerfuffle, but that we do need to have close ties. I mean, has it been that bad for our economy?
I don't think it's been as bad for the economies in the round as, say, the pandemic, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and going back. I know I'm a scratch record. I was telling Camilla this a couple of weeks ago. The country has still not recovered from the global financial crisis. That is what's really... It's nearly 20 years on, but that was really what battered long-term growth, long-term productivity improvements. That was what really blew the economy off course, and we've never recovered from that in terms of the impact that it had on the public finances as well. Now, they were starting to improve when the pandemic struck, and that really set us back to square one.
And indeed... that fact and the fact that from them wages did not keep up in the way that we had all become accustomed to. Some people say the roots in what's happening now in politics, the growth of sort of disruptor parties like Reform and the Greens, it is because people are saying, after all these years of struggling, of there being too much month at the end of the wage packet, saying, you know what, we can't sort of cope with these two parties. Maybe we'll just throw everything up in the air. And so Rachel Reeves talks about stability, but actually maybe people want to see seismic change.
Well, they do, but I mean, you know, arguably you had seismic change when people voted to leave the EU. But productivity, ultimately, productivity improvements is what pays for people's wages. The reason that wages growth has been so lacklustre for nearly 2 decades, it all goes back to the financial crisis.
I'm looking here at net migration forecast in this document. They're now saying that they think the difference between those arriving and those leaving will be around 200 to 300,000 a year between now and the end of this decade, the same as between 2012 and 2019. So they are now controlling that issue of net migration, aren't they, after the so-called Boris wave came here in the back end of the Tory government.
Sounds like the OBR's been quite conservative in its forecasting then, because there was a lot of speculation prior to these forecasts that they were going to say, well, you may not even have net migration at all to the UK, and that would have carried with it a big blow to the economy, because some of the viewers and listeners may not like to hear this. Less migration means less GDP growth.
There's a worrying table we found on page 70 of the document here showing the scale of welfare spending up from 314 billion last year to 406 billion. That's a near 100% increase.
And it's not with pensions.
100 billion increase.
No, it's not. It's not pensions by and large. It's in work benefits. It's people who are being paid benefits who are working.
It's about half pension spending, it says here, but the rest, there is UC and legacy entitlements.
You see it on the bar charts. It's not pension spending is not where the majority of that high benefits bill is coming in. Yeah.
Well, I am going to tear Chris and Ian away from their lovely blue books for a moment, and we're going to get out into the country. We're going to go to GB News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood, who is in Rachel Reeves' constituency of Leeds West and Pudsey. I can hear the horns beeping, Tom. They must be pleased to see you there.
Yes, that's right. We're here just west of Leeds, which is Rachel Reeves' constituency. We've been talking to people all day, but we're speaking to local businesses in particular. And I've come here to this beauty salon to speak to Ria, who is the owner here. She employs 2 people. And Ria, hi. We spoke a little bit earlier. Thanks so much for agreeing to speak to us. Yep. How are you feeling just about the state of the economy at the moment?
It's really hard as a small business. You're trying to make profit and trying to get in front a little bit, but with everything, the rise of cost of everything going up, energy bills, the cost of a stock, that's all made a big improvement, like taking a lot of money out of us businesses. And it don't reflect because we can't put the prices up to cover the cost of everything, because you have to stay so competitive within our industry, really, because there's so many other salons that are around here. You have to keep your prices so people will keep coming back. So you end up a little bit stuck of not being able to get in front and make that profit. And when you do get to a stage where we do have profit, it disappears in another hike in a utility bill or another, tax or a national insurance or something like that. It just diminishes away. Small businesses are really, really struggling. And it's also, you even get charged for things like having your credit card machines, banking your money, you're getting charged extra for that. So you feel like you're working really hard and paying out all the time.
Rachel Reeves today in Parliament was saying that the plan is working. That's what she was telling all the MPs who were baying and jeering. Do you feel like there is an economic plan and that it's working at all?
No. No, I feel like I'm struggling. I don't think it's made any massive differences. I think it's hard. And for anybody who's wanting to start a business, it's even harder because we're in a position where we're lucky because we have a lot of clients that come to us regularly and have been loyal to us for a lot of years. But somebody who's just starting up, I can't even imagine how worried they must be, not even knowing if they're going to get a wage at the end of the week.
And how do you feel?
I feel the same as Ria, to be fair. It's really hard. I've got a salon first year and we were having this conversation, which we always get as heads together, and it's like you put so much into it, but then even more goes out, so yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. So what would you like the government to do to help? I mean, or what have they done that really hasn't helped in the last year or two?
I'd say just the inflammation with all the bills, electric bills, card machines.
Yeah, utility bills.
And not even that, I think the cost of living, it affects a small business as well, because we're classed as like a luxury service, so straight away we're cut, So people are going to put the food, the bills in before they come and sit in a hairdresser's or at the nail salon. So.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to us. And we're going to be bringing more thoughts from here just west of Leeds in the Chancellor's own constituency throughout the day.
Fantastic to see Tom Harwood in a nail bar. Even more brilliant to get that great analysis from God's own country, Yorkshire.
Thank you. We're joined now back in the studio by the business journalist Ian King. Ian, we're going through this document here. It's called The Office for Budget Responsibility. This is the book we're going through. You're going through it too. What's come up here, and I've never heard the Chancellor mention this idea of GDP per head. That's economic growth per head. Now, why is that an important measure?
Well, it's important because if you look at GDP growth such as we've had over the last, really, couple of decades, a lot of it has come from very big, high levels of net migration. And that means that GDP goes up because, in theory, people coming to this country will be working. When you start to measure it by GDP per head, the picture isn't so great because it implies that, GDP growth would have stood still were it not for all these extra people coming into the country.
So individually, we're poorer.
Individually, we're poorer. And it's also worth pointing out, I mean, it flatters the performance of some countries. If you take, for example, a country like Japan, GDP has been pretty stagnant for a long, long time. That's because their population's falling. When you look at Japan's GDP per head, it's actually not that bad by comparison. But it's interesting here that the OBR talks about per-person output growth, which, as they say, an indication of changes in average standards of living. You heard Rachel Reeves refer to it then in her speech. And the OBR says marginally higher than in the November forecast. Regional GDP per person is forecast to grow at an average rate of 1.1% a year between 2026 and 2030. Now, that sounds OK on the face of it, except, and this I was going on to you about this just now, Gloria, the fact that the financial crisis really did blow us off course. And here the OBR actually spells it out. It says this contrasts with rates of per-person growth seen before the financial crisis, which averaged around 2% a year. If this trend had continued, real GDP per person would be around 30% higher today.
That's wages.
Demonstrating the huge impact of persistently lower productivity growth on living standards.
That all goes back to 2008, and indeed we hear the Prime Minister talking about 2008 as the beginning of the woes of this country, and I'm always surprised that that's a Labour period, of course, but it's not always a Tory problem. It goes back to the Labour period, all through the Tories, Lib Dems coalition. No one's got it going.
It really does.
Quick answer, if you can. Are our viewers and listeners, according to Rachel Reeves, going to be better off at the end of this Parliament, which it takes to 2029?
If the GDP improvements in GDP growth feed through into higher living standards, potentially. They're not going to be this year. And by the way, that is down to the fact that the labour market is much weaker than expected. You heard Mel Strite say in his response, 5.2% unemployment. You said it just now, Chris, it's going to go up to 5.4% under the OBR forecast. The other point that they're making is that you look at business surveys lately, very, very subdued. That's why they've cut their growth forecast for this year. But they go on to say this actually creates more slack in the economy. Now, that is a come-on for the Bank of England to lower interest rates. The Bank of England will only lower interest rates if they feel that it's not going to have an impact on inflation. If there's more slack in the economy, then potentially doing so is less inflationary. But I say again, Iran.
Back to Iran now. Ian King, thank you. And back to Iran. Some breaking news now. The US Embassy in Saudi Arabia has warned of an imminent threat of missile or drone attacks over Dhahran. Joining us now is an expert on Lebanese-Israeli relations, Jonathan El-Khoury. Jonathan, thank you for joining us today on GB News. What have you heard about this threat in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Well, as we have seen, since Saturday, the Islamic Republic of Iran hasn't really stopped to think where they're going to fire, and they're just firing everywhere. They are a threat to the entire Middle East and the entire world. As we have been saying that for all along, for more than decades, this is something that I think the international community doesn't really understand the depth of it, where this is an inevitable and an actual threat on Christian and all societies in the Middle East and the region.
And what should the international community do? You said they didn't understand the threat.
Yeah, first of all, the international community needs to stand by the U.S. and Israel while they're dealing with this threat. Because at the end of the day, we're talking, I don't think you over there realize what is happening here. The Islamic Republic of Iran, since its establishment at the end of the 70s, after the revolution in Iran, where they were actually fighting for freedom and democracy, they ended up having a theocracy, a religious dictatorship that is controlling its people. But not just controlling its people, they were working actively in occupying and controlling territories all across the Middle East. I am originally Lebanese. I was forced to flee Lebanon because of Hezbollah. That is one of the biggest proxies that the Islamic Republic of Iran has been funding, giving ammunition to, while they're occupying territories in Lebanon and occupying Lebanese people, forcing themselves on the Lebanese public. It happened in Syria with the Assad regime, where they assisted the Assad regime to butcher 500,000 people with the help of Hezbollah and the Islamic Republic. They've been controlling all over Iraq and all over the Middle East. I don't think you understand or realize the big threat that these organizations are having and actually actively destroying territories, civilizations, and people in the West. This war is not just the US and Israel's war, it's the entire world. And I think that the UK, as the one who once stood for the free world with Churchill when he stood by and forced the against Hitler, this is what should happen today. The UK should stand with the free world to protect itself from Iran and its occupation.
Well, Jonathan Al-Khoury, thank you for joining us. You're an expert, of course, on Lebanese-Israeli relations. Thank you for the update there from the Middle East.
Lots more to come on the show. More reaction to the Chancellor's spring statement from businesses.
Stay.
Hello, welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For many of us, it's a day of early spring sunshine, but probably staying fairly cloudy over much of the Midlands, parts of South Wales and South West England. An area of high pressure is dominating, but there is an old weather front just lying across central and southern parts of England and Wales. It is producing a little bit of rain and drizzle here and there, so a bit damp at times, Devon, Cornwall, parts of South Wales, but generally it's a dry day, apart from a few showers in northern Scotland. Much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, fine and sunny, and some sunny spells too across East Anglia and the South East, where temperatures likely to get to 15, 16 degrees, not quite as warm as yesterday, but not far off, pretty mild for most places. Temperatures closer to average further north, but in the sunshine, feeling very pleasant indeed. Now, with the clear skies, temperatures will be falling quite sharply as we go through this evening. Still one or two showers possible across the Northern Isles, but the breeze easing down here. But it's light winds and clear skies for Northern Ireland, much of Northern England well into the evening. Still quite cloudy, the skies over the Midlands and Wales at this time. A weak old weather front just edging back further north. Still maybe producing the odd little bit of drizzle, but most places dry. Until we see some showery rain just heading its way northwards up towards maybe Anglesey and then into eastern parts of Northern Ireland later in the night, into southwest Scotland by morning. Ahead of that, of course, northern Scotland will be quite cold. There will be a frost here. Elsewhere, most places just about staying above. Could see some pockets of isolated frost in rural spots. Could be some mist and fog around as well, which may take a while to clear. Quite a grey start tomorrow across eastern England. A damp start for the east of Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, Glasgow and Belfast seeing some outbreaks of rain. Glasgow may stay a bit dull and damp all day as we see some showery rain drifting across Scotland. The far north staying dry. Most of England and Wales brightening up with plenty of sunshine and a touch warmer tomorrow in the southeast.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. In Staffordshire, roadworks on the M6 northbound between Junction 15 and Junction 16 have resulted in the closure of one of 3 lanes, with congestion expected to ease after 2:45 this afternoon. In Rutland, traffic on the A1 southbound between the A606 and the A47 is experiencing delays of approximately 15 minutes, which should improve after 2:45. In West Wales, the A40 is currently shut in both directions from Haverfordwest to Sleabesh due to an incident. Meanwhile, train services are disrupted, with no cross-country and Great Northern trains running between Cambridge and Ely. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
The Chancellor is insisting she has the right economic plan for the country despite downgraded growth forecasts for this year.
Rachel Reeves claimed her plan is even more important as tensions rise, as we know, in the Middle East.
It comes as oil prices climb and the Chancellor is urged to scrap a proposed fuel duty hike set for September.
Let's speak now to our GB News national reporter Sophie Reaper, who's on a farm in Cheshire. Sophie.
Well, of course, all of these factors are hugely important, but they're incredibly important to our farmers. Now, in the spring statement last year, the words farming and agriculture were not mentioned once. So there was a little bit of hope that this year they might get some kind of information, some kind of stability from the Chancellor. But once again, in that spring statement, we heard absolutely nothing from our farmers. So to that end, let's speak now to the co-owner of this farm here in Cheshire, Andrew. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us once again today. We spoke earlier before the Chancellor delivered that spring statement, and you said you actually didn't have much hope. What are your thoughts now?
Well, no, I was proven right. She's never mentioned farming, agriculture, food security. You know, she mentioned national security, but she didn't mention food security, and I think they go hand in hand. She's very obsessed with the Tory back legacy, but she's not doing an awful lot for herself going forward. So, yeah, and she talked about putting money into the working man's pocket or the working person's pocket. We are one of the hardest working sectors probably around, and we are not seeing any benefit at all.
You mentioned two hugely crucial words there, food security. Now, given everything that's going on globally right now, that is becoming increasingly more important, not just by the day, by the hour. What do you think the government should be doing? Should food security, in your mind, be right at the top of the agenda?
Yeah, definitely. It should be right at the top, very much so. And they're just ignoring it. They're talking about trade deals and going around the world, having different trade deals. But they need to look further or closer to home on food security. We can look after ourselves if we're just given the chance to turn a bit of profit.
Now, of course, the Chancellor said in that spring statement she believes in a government that supports working people. You're, of course, a working person, Andrew. Do you feel that the government's supporting you?
No, not at all. And I dare say a lot of working people out there are feeling exactly the same thing. Everyone's feeling poorer. No one's feeling better off. She's come out with all these sound bites today about how she's putting money into the working person's pocket and it's going to be getting better and it's getting better, and it just feels that most people, if not everyone, it's getting worse.
In terms of stability, of course, farmers don't work in hours, days, even weeks or months. It's years, isn't it? Sometimes it's even decades. What does the government need to do to ensure that farmers feel some stability, feel that they can invest in their own trade?
Yeah, well, that's right. I think I mentioned this morning. What we need a time frame, and that's a 20-year time frame of across-party members, and sit down and just work out how we are going to achieve food security in this country in the long term, not in a parliamentary term, not in the first 6 to 10 years. I'm talking long-term strategic policies.
Andrew, thanks so much for joining us today. Really valuable hearing your opinion. Incredibly difficult time for our farmers, Chris and Gloria, and yet no mention for them in today's spring statement.
Thank you, Sophie Reaper. And outside where we're sitting here in Westminster, there are tractors going around Parliament Square, tooting their horns, protesting about farming policies from this Labour government. Now let's cross live to the GB News South of England reporter, Isabel Fekalak, who is in, of course, a pub, lucky her, in Dorset. Isabel.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm in the Old Thatcher pub in Wimborne, and this pub has very much been at the forefront of campaigns against the Labour government's budget. In fact, it was the landlord here, Andy Lennox, that initiated that nationwide ban on Labour MPs. Today, no talk of pubs or the hospitality sector at all in the spring statement, and I'm joined by Andy Lennox now. Andy, thanks for coming on. Last time we spoke was just after Reeves's U-turn, that business relief for pubs. I mean, you then said that wasn't enough, and today no talk of pubs. Was that a shock to you?
Well, not really, but I mean, there didn't seem to be very much talk of anything, actually, in fact. We didn't expect them to, allowance for VAT, right now, but what we did expect them to do was show that they understood what was going on at the moment. I mean, against a backdrop of when you've just lost 36 pubs yesterday, 500 jobs, and to say that everything's fine and to say that the budget, is going in the right way and everything they're doing is correct is just, beyond me, really. So no, we didn't expect them to do anything, and we're going to keep on pushing, but it's really, really frustrating that they're saying that everything is all right when actually the volatility in the industry is just enormous.
And yes, there was a lot of talk about stability in that statement, but this industry right now is not stable at all, is it? Tell me a bit.
I mean, there's no stability at all at the moment. I mean, what we're sitting here, we're sitting against a backdrop of enormous amounts of taxation. All of the things that basically went into the Rachel Reeves budget in the first budget and the second budget still haven't been fixed. And you've got bars, 6 places going bust every single day. As I say, Brewdog, enormous company, once valued at nearly £1 billion. Went bust yesterday for 33 million quid. 36 bars, 500 job losses, and that's going on every single day at the moment. And yeah, so to talk about stability is just ridiculous, really. And it's just frustrating that you've got this platform to be able to do something, and it just shows you how out of touch they are.
And I know you've launched this new VAT campaign, so we'll get a bit more information about that. But today, in the spring budget, no mention of pubs and hospitality, a sector that is struggling massively.
Thank you, Isabel. So pubs, farms and nail bars not very happy today.
Indeed. We're joined now in the studio by business journalist Ian King. Ian, what else have you found?
Well, very interesting. Before the statement started, we were talking about some of the things that have changed in terms of the spending outlook, and I mentioned, for example, that slight climb down on inheritance tax for farmers, the big increase in special needs spending, business rates relief for pubs and so on. And the OBR says that's going to add roughly £4.3 billion a year to borrowing in each year of this Parliament. Yes. The big ticket item of which is special needs spending. That's the biggie. That's around £4 billion on its own. Interestingly, maybe I haven't found it yet, Keir Starmer obviously said that he wanted to raise defence spending as a proportion of GDP to 3% by 2027. I can't find that in there because that was implicit around 17 billion more worth of spending. Haven't found that yet. Always worth looking at the risks that the OBR outlined to their forecast. One of the reasons, for example, they're quite optimistic about the state of the public finances. As we say,
that's our borrowing, really.
Yeah, borrowing as a percentage of GDP is set to come down over the course of this Parliament.
And that's good, isn't it? Because you mentioned that figure about how much we are spending on debt interest.
Now, one of the things that it's quite interesting, some of the things that the OBR talks about here, the fact that the stock market's gone up, for example, the rise in UK equity prices since November is a key driver of higher receipts in this forecast. I mentioned productivity.
That means tax for them as well.
Yes, exactly, of course, because they charge on stamp duty, there's capital gains taxes and so forth. But the other risks that they highlight here, I mean, they point out the tax to GDP ratio is forecast to rise to a high of 38% of GDP in 2030 to 31. A higher level of the tax take increases the risk that incentives are distorted. For example, the fact that there's this £100,000 cliff edge. A lot of people deliberately keep their earnings below that to avoid paying a marginal rate.
MPs going towards that by another decade, then paying us £200,000.
Now, listen to this. This is another risk factor that they mention here. They talk about risks of further industrial action in the NHS. They talk about whether the Home Office is going to achieve the planned reductions in asylum accommodation costs. There's a mention here of GDP defence spending, that 3.5% of GDP by 2035, that could cost around an additional £40 billion in today's money, says the OBR. And here's another one. This is really terrifying. A further risk is the future costs of welfare spending following the sharp growth of disability and health caseloads in the pandemic. That's why the Chancellor tried to cap disability benefits and sickness benefits last year, obviously voted down by our own MPs. The OBR's assuming here that caseloads will continue to rise, but at a slower pace than recently. But they go on to say this moderation in health-related caseload growth is highly uncertain. Turn to page 70, which we've been chatting about during the break, Chris. And here you go, the big increases in benefit spending. Now, the OBR is assuming that the triple lock remains in place throughout this Parliament. Pensioner spending, a share of GDP, goes up by 0.6% of GDP by 2030 to 31.
That's a triple lock in, King.
That's the
I
triple
don't
lock.
think that's going to survive the next election.
It's there in black and white.
Yeah, but after the next election, who's going to sign up to it?
Well, it's going to be here until the next election.
Yes, it
now,
is.
the OBR says this is partially offset. Don't forget, a lot of people in their 60s will be riled by this. Obviously, the state pension age is due to rise from 66 to 67 between 2026 and 2028. That saves the government a bit of money. That reduces pension spending by 0.3% of GDP. But look at these sickness and disability benefits. By the end of this Parliament, it's all set out here, the government is going to be spending on total welfare benefits by 2030-31, £406.9 billion per year. Now, the majority of that, or more than half of that, getting on for half of that, is pensioner spending. But it's these increases in disability benefits and universal credit that really shoot up. So in the current tax year, the one that we're about to come to an end, universal credit's costing £91.9 billion right now. That's going to go up to 106.2 by 2030-31. Disability benefits, and this is absolutely breathtaking.
Extraordinary.
£45.4 billion this year, up to £65.5 billion by 2030.
And this government does not want to cut those benefits.
Well, this government does, but their party doesn't. That's the difficulty, isn't it? We're going to have a quick break. We've got loads more analysis, loads more chat, loads more politicians coming up too.
Stay tuned.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The head of planetary defence at NASA has revealed what keeps her up at night, and that is tens of thousands of city-killer asteroids that remain undetected. They're out there, they're in space, they're heading our way. We need something to predict where they're going to.
Yeah, well, there was a case about 4 years ago, where they sent a spaceship up called DART to hit a massive asteroid which was heading our way, and it was something like 14,000 miles an hour it went at, and it hit this thing and diverted it, and the planet was saved. It made a bit of a story at the time. The problem is that it's the middle-sized ones. Lots of these asteroids come into the planet Earth every year, but they're so small they disintegrate
They burn up in the atmosphere and things, yeah.
The big ones we know about, and like the one which DART went out, it was 460 foot wide. It went out and diverted it. What they can't manage is that thousands of these asteroids, which are the middle size, which if they hit the planet Earth, it won't end life on Earth, but it will cause massive regional damage. They're the ones that they're worried about. So there's no. This expert says we sit awake at night worrying about it because there's so many of them.
We're as well not knowing.
Bring back Bruce Willis. Do you remember the film Armageddon?
Yeah, Armageddon.
Where he's a hero.
What I would
goes
say
and blows one up.
What I would say to worried viewers and listeners is that, of course, we're still here and these things have been coming around for years and years and they haven't hit us. So let's just keep our fingers crossed.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice
first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. We're joined now by Labour MP David Pinto-Dushinsky, a friend of the show, and of course the Shadow Business and Trade Minister Gareth Davis, and of course the business journalist Ian King is still here, leafing through the document from the OBR. Thank you for being here. To you first, then, David Pinto-Dushinsky. Before we went to the break, we were looking closely at this welfare spending page. 406 billion spent on welfare by the end of the decade, up from 332 billion now. That's a lot of money. A big increase there in pensioners, of course, we know about the triple lock, but also disability benefits up by 20 billion, up by a third. Why won't your government cut welfare spending?
Well, look, firstly, obviously, you'll know that that spending is flat as a proportion of GDP, and that, as you say, a lot of that rise is to do with pensions. But more broadly, of course, we are reforming welfare. But the really big message, I think...
But you're not cutting the bill.
Well, hang on. The really big message, I think, of this Spring's statement is that Rachel's plan, that Labour government's plan, is working. What we heard was growth being revised up, inflation being revised down, borrowing being revised down, cost of living. We're going to see people's money in pocket improving in real terms. This is a real turning point, I think, and I think over the course of this year, I think people will feel that more and more and more. I know people don't always feel it out there, but I think this is the year where that will really begin to be felt.
And the only important thing is whether people feel it. And on that, Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, asked what planet Rachel Reeves was living on to say it's all going great. I mean, people are still hurting. That means the plan's not working quickly enough.
So, look, of course we want people to feel this, but the facts are the facts. And I think we can all agree that regardless of our political persuasion, Mel Stride had a bit of a mare this morning.
Okay.
I'm sure Gareth will contest that.
Because it's really clear he didn't actually listen to the statement. I mean, what is clear is that as a result of the 6 interest rate cuts that have come around due to the financial stability, economic stability this government's brought, the average mortgage holder will be £1,300 better off because of the rises in a real income, which have gone up more in the first year of this government than in the last decade of their government. The average person will be £250 better off, more than £1,000 a year better off by the end of the Parliament. Just one final fact. Under the Conservatives, real living standards dropped. It's the only parliament in history where that's happened. Well, under this government, they will be going up by almost 6% per person per year. That's £1,000 per person per year because of the policies of this government and the action we've taken.
Gareth Davis.
I think we were watching different statements. What I heard was growth is downgraded. Unemployment is downgraded. Right? Just to put this in context, David likes to talk in facts. When Labour came to office, they had 2% inflation. It's now well over 3%, went to 4%. They talk about reducing inflation from their high. The reason it went up is because, of course, they pumped the system with public sector pay rises that we couldn't afford. That fueled inflation. The second point is, on growth, if I remember back to March 2024, the OBR, I was in the Treasury at the time, the OBR said that in 2026, on their forecasts, the economy would grow by 2%. Today we heard not only is the economy going to grow by 1.1%, that's downgraded from what they said just 3 months ago, which was 1.5%. So we can talk all day long about the numbers. The reality is growth is down, unemployment is up, inflation is elevated. They need to get a grip.
Actually, David, you're busting to get in, so I will let you do so.
I think it's fine to have a political debate, but we've got to have
it on the factual, numerical debate.
Sorry, on the basis of the facts. As Gloria said, growth has actually been revised up in 27
What's
and
happening
28.
This year?
Sorry, growth across
What's happening
across
this year,
the period is going to be up.
What's happening this year? Just talking facts.
No,
this year growth is downgraded. This year unemployment is up.
And under you, we inherited the second slowest...
That was in the past, David. People are hurting now.
No.
People are hurting now. And you're still talking about the past.
Let me finish. The second slowest growing economy in the G7. Now, because of the action we've taken, we're the fastest European G7 growing
Nobody cares
economy.
because they haven't got
what's
jobs,
more-
David.
what's
Come
more-
on,
sorry,
get a grip.
Overall employment's up by 381,000.
Nobody
Simply not
is
true.
listening to
it's
you
simply
anymore.
not true. I think that is ironic coming from a Conservative. But I think those are the facts. Happy to debate them. But what we saw both from your response and Mel Stride's response is a failure to engage with the actual plan and the fact it's actually working. Now, of course, people need to feel that, and that's what we're really focused on this year. But the facts are not deniable. Growth is up, inflation down, borrowing down, living standards up.
Okay,
that is what this government's
got. 30 seconds left, very quickly. No mention of defence spending going up quickly, any faster than we had expected. Why is that?
Well, look, obviously,
there's a war going on.
Sorry, and what this government's already done is put defence spending from next year beyond 2.5% of GDP, which, by the way, their government didn't achieve in 14 years. And we are, of course...
There wasn't a major war going on.
We've got loads more chat. We've got loads more chat. But right now, we are going to take a little break. We've got still loads more analysis. We've got reform. We're going to hear from reform. We've heard lots from Labour and the Tories. We've got reform to come. And Ian King is still with us.
This is the Spring Statement Live on GB News. Still more to come. Stay with us for Ian King, Gareth and David.
A camper van and cash could be yours in our very latest Great British Giveaway. You could be driving away in this brand new Benavan 122. This 2026 model, worth over £67,000, comes with all of the mod cons you'd expect. And that's not all, as you'll also get an incredible £25,000 in tax-free cash to boost your bank account this year. For a chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello, everyone, Patrick Christie is here to GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 3rd of March.
Optimistic Chancellor delivers her spring statement in the Commons, insisting her economic plan is working in an uncertain world, despite the country's growth forecast being lowered for this year.
It's not good news, but it's not bad news either. In fact, there's no news at all for our farmers, as once again, Rachel Reeves has neglected to mention farming in her spring statement.
Well, just yesterday, 38 pubs in the UK shut their doors, yet still no mention of pubs or the hospitality sector in today's spring statement. I'm going to be talking to a landlord who says he feels let down again.
Sharp criticism from President Donald Trump after the American president branded his stance on Iran not helpful and warned the special relationship is under strain.
And breaking in the past half an hour, the US Embassy in Saudi Arabia has warned of an imminent threat of missiles over Iran.
And Britain's first evacuation flight from the United Arab Emirates touches down at Heathrow Airport, whilst thousands of Brits are stranded in the Gulf this afternoon.
Send us your views and post your comments by going to gbnews.com/your say, or you can scan the QR code on your screens right now to let us know what you think. But first, here's the news headlines with Katie Bowen.
Chris, Gloria, thank you and good afternoon. The headlines at 2:01. President Donald Trump has said that Iran's Air Force, Navy and leadership is, quote, gone, adding that they want to talk. I said too late. His comments on social media come as the US Embassy in Saudi Arabia has warned of an imminent threat of missile or drone attacks over Tehran, and retaliatory strikes between Israel and Tehran continue, with the IDF beginning a large-scale wave of strikes targeting the Iranian terror regime's infrastructure a short while ago. The IDF has also identified missiles launched from Iran towards Israel in the last few moments. Earlier, the president said he is very disappointed with Sir Keir Starmer's approach to the war in Iran, adding it was sad to see that the relationship between America and Britain was not what it once was. In response, Sir Keir Starmer said that he was continuing to act in Britain's national interest and that he won't shy away from doing so. In a breaking update today, the Ministry of Defence is, quote, considering sending HMS Duncan to the Eastern Mediterranean to defend the UK's base in Cyprus, RAF Akrotiri. The development comes after the base was struck by an Iranian-made drone on Sunday. IDF soldiers are now on the ground in southern Lebanon, stationed near the border. Israeli military say they've killed a senior Iranian terror regime commander in Tehran. Israeli President Isaac Herzog spoke to GB News Breakfast about Britain's role in the conflict.
This empire of evil will not rest until you cut its wings and make sure that there's a different vision for the region with a different reality in Tehran, without their ballistic missiles and potential nuclear program and without their proxies all over the region. It's a moment of truth for leaders in the free world, and Britain is a top leader in the free world. Honestly, we know and we share a lot of interest together for many years, and I think the picture is very clear.
Well, a government charter flight will take off from Muscat in Oman in the coming days, Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has told the Commons. The first evacuation flight back to Britain from Abu Dhabi landed at Heathrow Airport last night. That's as Air France has cancelled all flights to and from the Middle East until Thursday. Yvette Cooper said that now 130,000 British nationals have signed up to the Register Your Presence programme in the Middle East as of this morning, with more than 300,000 Britons in the region overall. Yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer said the government was working on plans to get people home safely. As you've been hearing, the Chancellor says that the latest set of forecasts show the government's economic plans are the right ones, as she delivered her spring statement today. Rachel Reeves said that Labour has ensured economic stability and security, with 6 cuts to interest rates since the general election and real wages rising. Growth in GDP has been revised down in 2026 from 1.4% to 1.1%, but the forecast has been revised up for the following years, rising by 1.6% in both 2027 2027 and 2028. The Chancellor acknowledged the uncertainty brought about by the ongoing war in Iran, outlining her commitment to defence spending.
With the unfolding conflict in Iran and the Middle East, it is incumbent on me and on this government to chart a course through that uncertainty, to secure our economy against shocks and protect families from the turbulence that we see beyond our borders. In an increasingly dangerous world, I am proud to be the Chancellor that is delivering the biggest uplift in defence spending since the Cold War. With £650 million committed in January to upgrade our Typhoon fighter jets, a new Royal Navy frigate launched from Rosyth last week, and just yesterday, our £1 billion helicopter deal with Leonardo.
And the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police has said he understands why some women still do not trust the force. His comments come on the 5th anniversary of the murder of Sarah Everard. Sir Mark Rowley said several ghastly cases of police officers committing awful offences against women were bound to affect people's trust in the UK's biggest police force. The Commissioner said 1,500 people had been, quote, rooted out since 2022 and were no longer working for the force, many because of inappropriate behaviour towards women. 5 years ago this evening, Miss Everard was walking home when she was abducted and later raped and killed by Wayne Cousins, who was then a serving police officer. Cousins was later sentenced to a whole life term for her murder. A vigil will be held in honour of Sarah Everard on Clapham Common this evening. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now a quick look at the all-important markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
The pound will buy you $1.33 and €1.15. The price of gold is £3,878.51 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 10,489 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
The Chancellor is insisting she has the right economic plan for the country despite downgraded growth forecasts.
Speaking in the Commons, Rachel Reeves claims her plan is even more crucial than ever.
A plan that is even more important in a world that in the last few days has become yet more uncertain. I am proud to be the Chancellor that is delivering the biggest uplift in defence spending since the Cold War.
It comes as oil prices climb and tensions rise in the Middle East.
Now joined by business journalist Ian King. Actually, let's talk about the international situation and the impact that this has on what Rachel Reeves said today, because the forecasts that you're all pouring through now, they were done before the Iran war.
They do indeed, and there's a reference in there in the OBR statement to that. And this is one of the potentially problematic things, I think, with some of these forecasts. For a start off, I mentioned the stock market just now. Equity prices currently 8% above where they were during the November forecast. Well, if we get many more sessions like we've had over the last couple of days, they'll be rattling back to those November levels very, very quickly. Yes. FTSE 100, as we speak, is off another 2.5% this afternoon. And also, market expectations for energy prices, which have fallen since November. Wholesale gas prices are 15% lower over the forecast period, says the OBR. Well, wholesale gas prices rose by 54% yesterday, and they're up another 20% today. Now, we're not back at sort of post-Ukraine invasion levels yet, but that, if it persists, poses all sorts of problems for households and businesses. If you remember, post-Ukraine, it was actually Liz Truss's relatively brief time in office. One of the big things that she did announce during that time was support for households with their energy bills to the tune of £400 per household. That's one of the reasons why the public finances are in the state that they are now, because that was a colossal giveaway to every household in the land. And arguably Rachel Reeves is paying the price of that.
It's worth looking at the headlines of what we've learned so far. We the start up of the 2 p.m. hour. Where are we at the moment?
Yeah, so essentially growth has been downgraded this year, quite a sharp downgrade actually, from 1.4% to 1.1%. That's due to the rise that we've seen in unemployment, the slackening in the labour market, and some of the business surveys that are coming relatively weakly. We've then seen growth upgraded modestly for the next 2 years and then unchanged after that. Interestingly, the strongest year of growth is going to be 2028. Obviously, general election the following year, so that's quite nice for the Chancellor. The borrowing forecast, the borrowing outlook is actually slightly better for this current financial year. We've seen that in the numbers. Obviously, there was that very big surplus that was reported only for January, only a few days ago. Then borrowing ticks up again for the next couple of years, but then comes back down again. A lot of that is down to policy decisions since the November budget, and chiefly that extra spending on special educational needs. That's implied in that as another £4 billion a year. So that's quite another big change as well.
And the headroom has gone up too. That's the money they can spend on maybe tax cuts or whatever, or spending in this November budget.
Yes, that's right. The Chancellor in the November budget gave herself headroom of £21.7 billion for the end of this Parliament. That's actually risen to £23.6 billion. So as far as the Chancellor's concerned, the number's going in the right direction, although, as I say, it's slightly less than one or two people in the markets have been looking for.
Fantastic, Ian. We're now joined by the Labour MP, David Pinto-Dushinsky, and the Shadow Business and Trade Minister, Gareth Davis. And I'm going to raise something with you, David, which actually Ian pointed out earlier. He'd been looking through the document and he said there are risks to all the figures in this, and they're political risks. And the risks that Ian highlighted in the document were if the government doesn't curb spending on asylum hotels, if the government doesn't cut disability benefits, and if there are any potential strikes in the NHS. Let's park the strikes in the NHS bit for now. This is about political leadership. Can the government get past your backbench MPs like yourself? Can they actually ensure that asylum hotels are closed down by the end of the Parliament as promised, and that disability benefits are reduced in cost to the taxpayer? Your government had a go at this. The Labour backbenchers said, oh, no, you're not. What happens now on that?
Well, look, I mean, on migration in hotels, I think the timing of this statement is really telling. We've had Shabana Mahmood just a couple of days ago announce big changes to migration rules. We've seen that on the back of the biggest falls, I think, in history in total net migration. And you mentioned hotels. Hotel costs down 19%. And so, look, you can't turn around a super tanker overnight, but absolutely, this is a government that's making real progress on that. And absolutely, we're also determined to ensure that we continue to fix the mess in the welfare state that the Conservatives led. It's really striking. Again, it was Mel Stride responding to the statement this morning. He's the man who oversaw a £33 billion increase in the welfare budget. So once again, we've inherited a big mess. It's similar for youth unemployment and various things. We are turning it around. But there's a kind of broader point here. You're absolutely right to look at the risks. No forecast can take into account, what happens in future. But I'd make a couple of points. One, the government's building strong foundations so that we are more resilient against those risks. And so, for instance, the moves we are taking, to put the public finances on a better footing, we are reducing our deficit now faster than any other G7 economy. And for the first time, our borrowing will be lower than the average of the G7, which the Conservatives didn't achieve once, is really important. That's thing one. But thing two, we are also taking action today to help people with the cost of living, whether it's £150 off their energy bills, whether it's on childcare, the list goes on. But that's the important action.
I'm going to absolutely let you have your say, Gareth, on the Tories. Chris Hope.
We have a guest joining us now, the Reform UK spokesman for Home Affairs, Zia Yusuf. Zia, thank you for joining us today on our Spring Statement show. Can I ask, where's Robert Jenrick? I thought he was the Shadow Chancellor in your world.
I don't know, you should ask him. You should ask him. Look, he's tweeting out some really interesting stuff already. I want to make a few points about what we've already heard today. First of all, the obvious point, unemployment at 5-year highs in this country, youth unemployment at 10-year highs, no indication those things are going to get any better. Rachel Reeves crowing about, you talked about higher growth forecasts. Yeah, you know, the jam tomorrow, it's always next year, right? I mean, Chris, you've covered this. It's 15 growth downgrades over the last 15 years from the OBR, pretty much. All but 1 year, I think they've cut the current year's growth forecast and promised next year would be better. So people have heard all of this stuff before. It is a direct result of Rachel Reeves' disgraceful policy announcements and total lack of understanding how economics work. So she increased the risk of hiring people through the, as we call it, the Unemployment Rights Act, and she increased the cost of employing people through a hike in national insurance contributions. And that is driving not only higher unemployment, but the OBR today drawing a direct link between slower wage growth and for British workers and the NIC hike. I also want to make another point with regards to immigration. So the OBR still forecasting net immigration to be in the hundreds of thousands a year through the rest of this parliament, but they have cut their net immigration numbers. You might think, oh, well, good news, right? Good news. The OBR reduced its net immigration number. No, because they have said explicitly it is driven entirely by British nationals fleeing the country. That is what is happening right now. And, you know, we talk about replacement. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is literally what the Office of Budgetary Responsibility is saying is happening. And I think it's a really dangerous time for this country. The sooner Rachel Reeves and this Labour government are gone, the better.
Well, just explain to me, because you said something interesting in your answer, which was you blamed part of the reason for the downgrading forecast on promises to improve people's rights at work, the Employment Rights Act. That polls incredibly popularly. What is wrong with giving people more rights at work? What have you got against that?
Yeah, look, it's one of those bills that is titled as something that sounds really bad to repeal, right? Because, of course, you want workers to have as many rights as possible. Who wouldn't? But here's the problem. You don't have any employment rights if you're not employed. And if you talk to small businesses, you know, anyone who's actually managed a business, anyone who's actually made hiring decisions, and we hear a lot from small and medium-sized businesses who are the biggest employers in the country, and they say because of the changes that have been made as a result of this legislation, what is happening is because all these rights arrive on day one, literally the second this person starts, they don't have big teams of lawyers like the big corporates in the FTSE 100 and the big American companies. So that what happens is it raises the risk of the odd bad hire to potentially devastating consequences. And that, of course, comes on top of high business rates.
It's been changed now to 6 months, hasn't it, from 1 month?
And so all that's happening is instead of more people having more rights in work, which sounds obviously like a great thing and would be a great thing, the actual effect of the legislation, and this is what matters, is businesses are simply hiring fewer people, especially small and medium-sized businesses.
So would you keep 0 hours contracts? Do you think they're a good thing? So if you work a certain number of hours, then you will have a contract. That's part of the Employment Rights Act. Do you think that's a bad thing?
Well, I think the most important thing with all of this is that the legislation needed to have been done in a manner which is in discussion, which, again, I want to emphasize, it is mainly small and medium-sized businesses that are not just pulling back on hiring, they're stopping hiring altogether. So we are not in favor of interventions that sound great. This is why we use the phrase student politicians. And we use that phrase advisedly, because, look, if you're going to take this sort of approach to legislation to its logical conclusion, why not legislate to make everybody a millionaire?
Yeah.
Right, if you take it to its logical conclusion. Well, the reason why you wouldn't legislate for that is because that's obviously ridiculous and wouldn't work in the real world. And you look at the result of the policies that Rachel Reeves has announced. You know, she claimed, you know, Labour promised in their manifesto that they would not increase taxes on working people. So instead, what they did was something very crafty and through the back door that technically means that they have complied with that manifesto pledge, but ends up having exactly the same effect because British people are seeing that tax that is being imposed on employers directly in their own, or rather indirectly in their own wages, according to the OBR themselves.
Yeah, if we're looking at one of the pages on welfare spending, looking at the increase in the cost of welfare to $406 billion by 2030, 2031, that could be the first year of a reform UK government. Half that's through pensioner spending. Would you cut or axe the triple lock?
No, look, Robert's made clear every time he's been asked about this and taking the Royal Shadow Chancellor, we think it's really important that older people in this country are treated with dignity and are treated appropriately for what they've contributed to the country. So I would say the most important thing we've got to focus on is putting British people first. The amount of money that is still being squandered, we've almost become desensitized to this stuff, right? You know, north of £7 billion a year being spent on just accommodation and border force costs just for asylum seekers and illegal migrants. That's before you talk about the cost of, for example, foreign aid. We've already said we're going to put a hard cap at £1 billion in terms of foreign aid. That's going to be down from, that would mean cutting it from 14 billion. Some people might say, why didn't you eliminate it completely? Well, it's because we want to keep our seats at the United Nations and at the World Bank. We do think that's important, but that would still mean basically decimating the foreign aid budget. Let's reallocate that money back to British citizens. How can we be spending hundreds of millions of pounds in foreign aid of British taxpayers' money to countries like Turkey, where Turkish 15-year-olds are performing meaningfully better than Welsh 15-year-olds in the global PISA educational rankings? It's unconscionable. Then you can start looking at areas like welfare for foreign nationals. I mean, Britain has become a food bank for the world. The government, the Tory government and the Labour government now basically have hidden. They continue to hide the true cost. They don't give you the data on foreign national usage of the state pension or PIP or any of those line items. We do get it on universal credit. And here's what we know. Over the last 18 months, foreign nationals have taken £15 billion of British taxpayers' money in the form of universal credit. And I say, look, these are decisions British politicians are making.
Look, Zia Youssef, thank you so much for joining us today on the show today. Thank you, of course, the Reform UK spokesperson for Home Affairs. Thank you, Zia Youssef.
Thank you.
In the last few moments, leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, says she is worried about the US special relationship after Trump's comments, the comments he made about Keir Starmer.
Well, if our Prime Minister had a better relationship with President Trump, we would know more. But instead, what we're having is President Trump saying that our Prime Minister was delaying things and the special relationship is not what it is. I am very worried about that. Our relationship with the United States goes beyond any individual president. Our relationship with the United States is long-standing. They are our closest military ally. We cooperate with them on security that keeps the British safe. That is something that we must not underestimate. And I'm worried that Keir Starmer, despite all of the stuff that he has done, is not actually thinking about how we maintain that relationship, especially when it comes to defence and security.
OK, we're joined in the studio here by Labour MP David Pinto-Tuchinski and the Shadow Business and Trade Minister Gareth Davis. To you first, Gareth Davis. It is a worry, isn't it, what we're hearing from Donald Trump about this special relationship? Why is France a better friend than the US in terms of responding to the war in Iran?
Well, Rachel Reeves herself said, look, these are very troubling times, very uncertain times, but through all the history we've had over the last 100 years, we've stood by America and America stood by us. And it's vital that we have a really strong transatlantic relationship. I would urge the Prime Minister to address some of the issues that are going on at the moment, not least the drivel and delay on Iran. Got there in the end, but we need America to know that we are there for them to provide the support that they need. Of course, Keir Starmer has a lot of issues on his own side. He's got to balance that. Of course he does, but put the country first and stand by America. But Donald Trump has also rebuked the Prime Minister on the treatment of the oil and gas industry. And it was very interesting that Rachel Reeves has said that she's going to meet the industry tomorrow. Is there another 17th U-turn on the cards? Because the decimation that's happened in the oil and gas industry under the Labour government is atrocious.
Gareth, yeah, great point. Now, what does that mean? This meeting tomorrow morning with the oil and gas industry in the North Sea. Is there a U-turn coming on net zero targets, David? And also this line from Kemi Badenoch about the special relationship. Is that
let me actually start with the special relationship, because this is really important. And it's exactly because Keir Starmer's built, I think, uniquely strong relationship with the US, that we got the best trade deal, that when Donald Trump made those appalling comments about NATO soldiers, it was then Keir Starmer who talked to him. We actually saw Donald Trump, change his tune. And so I think we've actually built a really strong relationship. But part of what having a really strong relationship has, and by the way, we've always been very clear, it's not about choosing between America or Europe. We must have strong relationships with both. But part of what being strong in a relationship is about us being able to stand up for the national interest. And that's exactly what Keir Starmer's doing. And we've made very clear, of course, we have incredibly close relationships with our US allies, but we must always make clear that we're standing up and putting Britain's interests first, and that on issues like Iran, we are making sure we are acting in the lawful way. Well, look, obviously, I don't know about that, but what I would say is, again, it's precisely the government's policies in weaning us off dependence on overseas oil and gas that will help protect our national security for the long term.
Thank you very much indeed. We're now going to take a short break, but lots more coming up on today's show. The UK is considering sending a major warship to Cyprus. We'll have the latest details.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
The time is 2:28. Oil and gas prices have surged after an Iranian official warned that all ships attempting to pass through the key Strait of Hormuz shipping lane would be set on fire.
The conflict in the Middle East has seen UK gas prices surge by more than 46%, pushing it to the highest price for 3 years.
Joining us now in the studio are two people, business journalist Ian King and GB News national reporter Charlie Peters, who I'm going to start with. Just bring us up to date with the latest situation in the Middle East, Charlie.
Well, our personnel and assets in Cyprus at RAF Akrotiri are now in serious trouble. At the very earliest, we could have a destroyer in that area within a week. And the reason why we need that asset there is because destroyers have the anti-ballistic missile capability. At the moment, we've been scrambling Typhoon jets out of that runway to intercept drones, and they could also shoot down those low-flying, slightly slower cruise missiles, which haven't been fired towards that location at the moment. It's very difficult to stress just how susceptible we are to that form of fire that Israel and other nations are intercepting at the moment, including many Gulf states, but the UK at the moment cannot sufficiently defend its personnel at that base. So this is footage of HMS Duncan taken recently, I'm told, but I have seen it laid up in dock from a source in Portsmouth from a source in the last hour. So it's still not left the United Kingdom. If it is going to get there, it'll have to get a move on very quickly, which has left us in this remarkable political and military strategic situation where the United Kingdom has, for the best part of 3 years, in a sense, downgraded quite aggressively its relationship with Israel. We've recognised the state of Palestine. We have suspended arms deals with the country, which we are now relying on to protect UK personnel and assets in the region. I was just on the phone with some IDF troops in Israel just over the last couple of hours. One of them told me, says, we don't care if people are behaving stupidly towards us, such as Britain or France, or acting negatively towards Israel. We won't hold it against you. We will still defend your base if it's necessary. Right now, the only state that is destroying the launchers that are firing towards the United Kingdom's sovereign areas are Israel. Israel is destroying the drone launchers in Lebanon. The United Kingdom is watching and waiting and cannot actually defend that base.
Sean, I've got to ask you, as someone who observes how these issues build up, why we allow America to go so far ahead in amassing this huge mass of material and warships in the Middle East, and we seem to be nowhere near it. We've got HMS Duncan, we're seeing images on screen just moments ago of that ship in port in the UK.
Yeah, it's a tremendous military and strategic error. There's no getting away from that. For the first time in well over 40 years, we have no ships in the Gulf. That decision was made in recent months. We have seen this build up, but part of the reason for that, Chris, and the government ministers will say this, we heard Labour MP Calvin Bailey, himself an RAF veteran, yesterday saying that actually there's been years of mismanagement of the armed forces. We only have 6 of those destroyers, like HMS Duncan. Only one of them is fully operational right. One of them has been in dock being refitted for thousands of days. It's spent more time in dock than it has operationally. So HMS Duncan, the only one available. Clearly these things take a while to build up. They can't be just rapidly deployed. Personnel, resources, material all need to be prepared to launch such a high power destroyer. I was actually on one of these destroyers last year with the Royal Navy. They are state-of-the-art equipment. We weren't able to take our cameras inside the operations room, but it doesn't matter how state-of-the-art it is. If you haven't got it in the region, we are relying, let's put it bluntly, we are relying on Israel and America to protect British sovereign areas.
Ian King, you've been going through the OBR document. Here it is. No mention of defence in here properly, is there?
Well, there are one or two references to it, but to pick up on the point that Charlie was making about oil and gas prices, we've got this meeting with North Sea leaders tomorrow that Rachel Reeves flagged.
Which was a surprise, wasn't it, when she did?
What's interesting, though, when you look at the details in the OBR report, is just how little these taxes actually raise. Offshore corporation tax, petroleum revenue tax and the energy profits levy are expected to raise £4.1 billion in 2025-26. That's 0.1% of GDP. And that's going to be down 5.4% on last year due to lower oil and gas prices. Well, the fact that we're seeing prices already increasing now potentially raises a bit of money. But the point is, it's all the jobs that go with that. That's what, there are some 30,000 people still working on the UK North Sea oil basin. And those are well-paid jobs.
And the trade unions are absolutely sort of at loggerheads with the Labour government on this, aren't they? They're saying to support these workers because, as you say, they are good jobs.
What I think really makes it hard, though, for the government is obviously there were indications that the Chancellor, November 2025, the Chancellor said that the 5p cut to fuel duty was going to be unwound in 3 stages. First reversal planned for September 2026. Duty rates then planned to be uprated with RPI from 2027-2028. We've obviously had a freeze in fuel duty since 2010. George Osborne's done it. No Chancellor has dared to unwind it. That is a colossal... And the poor old OBR, by the way, has to assume every year that it's going to be unfrozen, and it never is. No Chancellor, as I say, has dared do it. What's the cost going to be this year? Well, according to the OBR, fuel duty receipts are going to peak at 27 billion in 2028 to 29. They're assuming that it comes off after that because more people buy electric vehicles. Not sure about that given electric vehicle sales lately. But the OBR says here, were the fuel duty rates to remain unplaced during the forecast level, that would reduce receipts by £3.6 billion a year from 27-28 to 2030-31. That is a colossal giveaway. That's £10 billion given away right there.
Just to assure viewers and listeners who, I mean, we've all been worried about our energy bills for the last few years, but the cut in April, I know it could have done with being in the winter, but that cut is still coming in April.
Yeah.
150 quid each.
117, I think.
17, sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, don't forget that sleight of hand. I mean, they're basically moving that from the cost of these green levies from household bills to general taxation. I mean, it's still a cost that's being borne somewhere in the economy.
Charlie Peters, in this document, nothing about this accelerated spending on defence. That's a worry too?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, yesterday, actually the day before, sorry, it's hard to keep track of this moving situation, Israel stood up 100,000 military reservists. That is a population a sixth of the size of ours, raising more soldiers than we have in the regular and the reserve. The British military is being asked to do so many things all around the globe. It is committed in so many different areas, but right now, when it matters, it cannot react to a key threat to British personnel and assets. And it's not just soldiers there, it's families as well. Not only do we not have that destroyer in the region to intercept ballistic missiles, which was present in the Red Sea, defending commercial shipping lanes at the end of 2023 into 2024. That was HMS Diamond. They were very proud to have a diamond in the rough in that situation in the Royal Navy. Right now, there's nothing there. And it's not just the Navy, as I was saying. It's also the ground-based air defence systems. This responsibility has shifted regularly between the Royal Air Force and the British Army. The Royal Artillery was meant to take it on. It has been denigrated and ignored for too long. So RAF Akrotiri is often referred to as an unsinkable aircraft carrier, but if it cannot defend itself from those ballistic missile strikes, that runway can be knocked out very quickly. That puts us in grave danger.
I was looking at an opinion poll today on where British public opinion is in terms of whether we should be involving ourselves in the war in Iran. Sort of very sceptical, British public, actually. Do we as a nation still bear the scars of the Iraq war?
No, absolutely. No doubt. And I think that's a problem for Labour MPs, of course, remembering that moment in 2003 as a hesitancy to engage in military action. We saw it come again with the Labour Party in the interventions in Syria, for example. Lots of discussions there about are we committing ourselves to a forever war? But that was a totally different scenario, a foreign country that didn't necessarily directly threaten the United Kingdom. What we have here is an Iranian proxy in Hezbollah striking British soil. They have attacked, in a sense, the United Kingdom by striking that one-way Shaheed, that's martyr in Persian, attack drone on British territory. And so far, the UK is considering responding with sufficient defences that might not be ready in Portsmouth.
Charlie Peters, thank you for joining us. A great update there. Thank you to Ian King. Lots more to come on the show. More reaction to the Chancellor's Spring Statement. This is the Spring Statement live on GB News.
Hello, welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For many of us, it's a day of early spring sunshine, but probably staying fairly cloudy over much of the Midlands, parts of South Wales and South West England. An area of high pressure is dominating, but there is an old weather front just lying across central and southern parts of England and Wales. It is producing a little bit of rain and drizzle here and there, so a bit damp at times, Devon, Cornwall, parts of South Wales, but generally it's a dry day, apart from a few showers in northern Scotland. Much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, fine and sunny, and some sunny spells too across East Anglia and the South East, where temperatures likely to get to 15, 16 degrees, not quite as warm as yesterday, but not far off, pretty mild for most places. Temperatures closer to average further north, but in the sunshine, feeling very pleasant indeed. Now, with the clear skies, temperatures will be falling quite sharply as we go through this evening. Still one or two showers possible across the Northern Isles, but the breeze easing down here. It's light winds and clear skies for Northern Ireland, much of Northern England well into the evening. Still quite cloudy, the skies over the Midlands and Wales at this time. A weak old weather front just edging back further north. still maybe producing the odd little bit of drizzle, but most places dry. Until we see some showery rain just heading its way northwards up towards maybe Anglesey and then into eastern parts of Northern Ireland later in the night, into southwest Scotland by morning. Ahead of that, of course, northern Scotland will be quite cold. There will be a frost here. Elsewhere, most places just about staying above. Could see some pockets of isolated frost in rural spots. Could be some mist and fog around as well, which may take a while to clear. Quite a grey start tomorrow across eastern England. A damp start for the east of Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland. Glasgow and Belfast seeing some outbreaks of rain. Glasgow may stay a bit dull and damp all day as we see some showery rain drifting across Scotland. The far north staying dry. Most of England and Wales brightening up with plenty of sunshine and a touch warmer tomorrow in the southeast.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Traffic disruptions are reported in Leicestershire, where Northamptonshire's M1 southbound lane between junctions 24 and 23A is closed following a vehicle fire. Expect delays of approximately 20 minutes, and it may not fully clear until after 3:15 p.m. this afternoon. In Pembrokeshire, there is a road closure on the A40 in both directions between Haverfordwest and Sleabek due to an ongoing incident. Rail services are also affected, with Cross Country and Great Northern having no trains operating between Cambridge and Ely, leading to wider disruptions on other routes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's 20 to 3. The Chancellor says the Treasury is in a better place to handle soaring oil and gas prices.
But Rachel Reeves is still under pressure to scrap September's planned fuel duty hike. We say it every year as tensions in the Middle East escalate.
Let's speak to GB News national reporter now, Sophie Reaper, who is at a farm in Cheshire. Sophie, what's the spring statement gone down like there?
Well, you're joining me, Chris and Gloria, from this really rather impressive tractor. And you might be wondering why I've been trusted in this rather magnificent bit of kit. And the answer probably is because the owner of this tractor and this farm perhaps trusts me more in this tractor than he trusts the government to offer farmers stability. And that is because once again in the spring statement that Rachel Reeves delivered just a couple of hours ago, she neglected once again to mention farming or agriculture whatsoever. Now, given the current situation geopolitically, with food security, with gas prices being hiked by 93% just this morning, with fuel prices, with all of those issues, you might think, how is the United Kingdom going to be able to sustain itself? Well, that's thanks to our farmers. And yet, for many farmers around the UK today, they'll have listened to that statement from the Chancellor and been wondering about stability, about how they're going to continue. We had the chance to speak to the owner of this farm who reacted to the statement itself, and here's what he had to say.
We'll not get anything out of them because they don't really... We are an inconvenience to them at the moment. They've made that very clear, really, that, you know, farming is not something that's on their agenda, even though with what's going on over the weekend, you'd think food security would be the most important part of, well, one of the most important parts of this week's agenda, really, just to, you know, because we can't be relying on food imports if we're going to see crisis in the Middle East, and it is a fight to survive at the moment.
Well, that was Andrew you heard there, who's the co-owner of this farm here in Cheshire. But I'm sure his sentiments there right at the beginning about how they feel they'll get nothing more from the government, I'm sure that's a sentiment that is shared all around the UK for farmers in Great Britain. They feel that last year there was no mention of them in the spring statement. Once again, there's been no mention of the spring statement. And given the current climate around the world, farmers here in Great Britain really just don't know where they stand anymore.
Sophie Reaper, thank you for that update. Let's cross live now to GB News South of England reporter Isabel Fegelak, who of course is in a pub in Dorset. Isabel.
Yes, I'm at the Old Thatch pub in Wimborne. Now, it was here where that nationwide ban on Labour MPs actually started. And I can tell you that today, after that spring statement, that ban is certainly still in place. Yes, absolutely no talk of support for pubs or the hospitality sector as a whole in that statement today, despite it struggling, several pubs closing every day. I'm joined now by Andy Lennox, the pub landlord here. Andy, you've campaigned for so long for extra support. No talk of that today. Was that a shock to you?
It wasn't a shock to us in the sense that we knew that the spring statement, they kind of already said that they weren't going to do anything. But for us, what shocked me was the fact that they kept on talking about stability and they kept on talking about how the economy is growing and how the economy is doing so well. And then that's against the backdrop of where you've got, for example, Brewdog that's just gone bust yesterday, and 33 pubs have closed in one day, 500 job losses. So what's really, really frustrating for me is that they're not talking about what they're going to do. So there's so much instability. And we're calling for this VAT campaign, VAT in line with Europe. That's what we need. That's what has to happen for this industry. And what's frustrating is they're saying that everything's okay, but it's just not.
And talk me through that campaign that you've launched, a reduction in VAT that brings you in line with Europe. Tell me a bit more about that campaign.
Yeah, so basically VAT is, in England is at 20%. In line with Europe, it's about 13%. What we're saying is we need to come down into in line with Europe, where they value their hospitality and they care about people who work in the industry. And that's what we need to get down to. And what we've said is we've pulled everybody around. So you've got, hospitality voices, hospitality celebrities, all the trade bodies, everybody is now calling for one thing. So if people aren't hearing it, then they're not listening, because it is VAT in line with Europe. That's the only thing that's going to save this industry.
Now, of course, a lot of talk about stability today, but pubs are closing every day, as you said, and as a landlord yourself, are you fearful for the future of the industry?
Look, it's really, really, really quite difficult. You've got six businesses, hospitality businesses, go bust every day. If you imagine Brewdog yesterday, that's 35. So, it's just growing and growing and growing, and it is a constant thing. And I get constantly people turning around to me and going, look, we're just going to, hang in the towel now. And, it's really quite sad, the amount of businesses that are going bust, like, every single day. And nobody's listening, and all that everyone's saying is, oh, everything's fine and we're doing really well. You've got a £23 billion, net, surplus. Well, let's use that and actually save an industry before it goes completely kaput.
So a really sad state for pubs. Thank you for coming on today, Andy. So no mention of extra support for pubs and hospitality sector. As we heard there, that wasn't a shock to them, but definitely still needing that support to stay alive.
And we'll chat about that, Isabel, after a very short break. There's lots more coming up, more reaction to that spring statement with our panel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
And President Donald Trump has expressed his disappointment in Sir Keir Starmer after the Prime Minister held off giving military offensive support in the strikes against Iran.
The US President suggested that Keir Starmer is pandering to Muslim voters by not backing the war, declaring that Britain is not such a recognisable country anymore.
Speaking in the House of Commons yesterday, the Prime Minister defended his decision not to become involved in the initial wave of strikes on Iran. But in doing so, is he putting the special UK-US relationship at risk?
Joining us now is GB News national reporter Charlie Peters. Very big question, Charlie. What's your answer? I mean, it's survived a lot, the special relationship. It will survive, won't it?
Yeah, but those strong language reactions from Donald Trump, I mean, certainly suggest that he is severely disappointed in the British action. We can bring you some footage now of HMS Duncan, filmed in the last hour in port in Portsmouth, because MOD sources have told us that they are considering sending this Royal Navy destroyer to RAF Akrotiri, to Cyprus, to defend that base. But as you can see, this shared with us just in the last hour, that it's still in port in Portsmouth. So very much in dock, not ready to go just yet. And that's from the last hour. As we're hearing from Donald Trump making these stark and very strong statements against the British military and strategic action in this war, there are internal questions to answer about how prepared we are, not in terms of getting involved in offensive actions, but just defending our own people. There are no counter-ballistic missile assets in the area to defend British personnel, not only in Cyprus, but also in Bahrain and further afield in Qatar. We will be relying on other nations to do that job for us. Not only are we relying on Israel to strike those launch sites in Lebanon, particularly for those one-way Shahed attack drones of the sort that actually successfully hit British sovereign territory in Cyprus, we're also going to be relying on the Greek Hellenic Navy, which has sent 2 destroyers, one of them very modern, only launched in January of this year, into the area. The Greek military has maintained its spending even amid serious economic downturn. Britain, by contrast, has massively scrapped so many key assets from all 3 services. So very much a hangover from the Conservatives for Labour now. They are in deep trouble trying to rebuild the military. But as it stands, if we are going to defend against ballistic missile threats to that area, it's going to take at least a week to get there.
Wow.
Charlie Peters, thank you. Back to our panel before you have to go, both of you, Gareth and David. Gareth, to you first. Nothing in here about accelerating defence spending. Charlie Peters eloquently setting out the problems there with our defence. A lot of it on your watch, 14 years in power. To remind viewers, Tories didn't do enough on defence. Why not more in here?
Well, we can deal with what the Conservatives did, if you like, in the past. We had the biggest spending since the Cold War. But you're right, Rachel Reeves chose to do nothing today. She said nothing. She chose not to have this as a budget, as a fiscal event, where she could have shored up our defences, she could have helped our farmers, she could have helped our pubs. She chose not to. All she said was that unemployment is spiralling out of control.
Well, unemployment is now a problem. It's forecast to go up. That's more people losing their jobs this year.
Well, look, before I come to that, I do just want to come back to something Gareth said a second ago. Obviously, what Rachel did talk about was that Labour's brought in the biggest rise in defence spending since the Cold War. We're spending just £1 billion just was brought out last week on helicopters, launching another frigate in kind of Rosyth. In comparison, the Conservatives, by the admission of their own Defence Secretary, hollowed out the armed forces. So I'm not going to take lectures from them. In terms of unemployment, what the projections show is that by the end of the Parliament, it will actually be lower than it was under the Conservatives, and employment is higher than it was across the average of their period. So look, more to do. We are taking on the mess and trying to fix the mess.
Before you both go, marks out of 10 for the spring statement. To you first, Gareth.
For the 5.5% of people who are going to be unemployed as a result of this government, 0.
And David?
10 out of 10. It's working, totally, and we're delivering the change we were elected to deliver.
Well, who'd have thought it? They are split on party lines. Thank you for getting in touch. Thank you for watching. That's it for the Spring Statement 2026. Martin is up next.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. More sunshine to come tomorrow for England and Wales, but it will be for many quite a grey start. For Scotland and Northern Ireland, some brightness, but also a few showers. I've seen a few across the far north of Scotland today. They're fading away, and through the night, a zone of cloudier weather will drift up across Northern Ireland. So clear skies initially, but turning cloudy with a few showers here, pushing into southwest Scotland by the end of the night. For most of England and Wales and much of northern Scotland,